Welcome back. This is a place for quiet stories from the wizarding world, the paths canon never walked, the choices that might have changed everything. Here, we take a single moment and turn it slightly. We follow the consequences slowly, carefully, year by year. If you enjoy these long, immersive journeys into alternate magic, consider subscribing and settling in. Now, let's start. The Great Hall is broken and full of echoes. Stone shattered, banners burned, the air still humming with the last curses of a war that finally brutally ended. Harry stands in the center of it all, chest heaving, wand loose in his fingers, staring at the slack, pale face of Voldemort, lying dead on the cracked flagstones. This is the night everything changed. Not the first time with a green flash over a crib, but the second, with a man who has lost too much watching his enemy's body cool. The cheers are rising around him, raw and disbelieving, but they cut through the grief like a knife. Fred, Remus, Tonks, Snape, Colin, names, faces, screams. A war paid for in blood, finally won. Harry blinks. No Great Hall, no bodies, no wands, only the smell of dust and spiders and old cleaning products pressing in close. A thin mattress under his back, a too low ceiling inches above his face, a cupboard under the stairs. He knows this place. His lungs seize before his mind can catch up. Then his hands move, smaller, bonier, shaking, as they fly to his chest, his scar, his ribs. No cracked ribs from the last duel. No stinging curse burns. His glasses are the wrong prescription. What if the Harry who defeated Voldemort woke up here, back in his cupboard, trapped in his 11-year-old body with every memory of the war? What if every death he's ever seen is still fresh behind his eyes, every Horcrux location etched into his bones, every betrayal replaying in perfect, merciless detail? What if the boy who lived is no longer a boy at all, but a veteran forced to survive childhood a second time? The door creaks. Vernon snarls something about breakfast. It doesn't matter. The words wash over him like background noise on a battlefield he already knows by heart, because in that cramped dark, Harry makes a choice. Not again. This is not the story of a frightened child stumbling into Hogwarts wide-eyed and unprepared. This is that story of the man who already won the war, sent back to the night everything changed for him, determined to make sure it changes for everyone else. Hogwarts will not be the same castle that raised him and broke him. A troll in the dungeons? A possessed professor with the Philosopher's Stone? A basilisk in the walls? Harry already knows the corridors where students will scream, the bathrooms where blood will spread, the exact shelf where a diary will wait to be picked up. Instead of reacting, he will be waiting. The Ministry will not blunder into this war a decade late. Fudge, Umbridge, the trials that never happened. Harry has seen every cowardly decision, every cover-up. This time, he can outplay them years early, turning laws and headlines into weapons before they even realize there is a game. And Voldemort will rise to find an enemy who knows his every move, every Horcrux, every ritual, every weak point. The graveyard in Little Hangleton, the cave on the coast, the ring in the gaunt shack. Harry has walked this path once, bleeding. Now he can lay traps on every step. But how far can he go without becoming the kind of strategist Dumbledore was, or the kind of monster Voldemort is? How do you pretend to be 11 when you've buried friends, commanded armies, and watched the world burn? This is a long war told twice, from cupboard to castle, from first letter to final duel. We're going to walk through an alternate timeline where every familiar moment is twisted by one impossible second chance. So, when the Hogwarts letter falls through the mail slot this time, what does Harry do first? Setting the rules of this second chance, we need to pin the moment the universe flinches. It happens in the ruins of Hogwarts. The war is over, Voldemort is dead, and the Elder Wand lies quiet in Harry's hand. The Great Hall still smells of smoke and blood. Bodies are lined in rows. Fred, Remus, Tonks, Snape cooling in the shrieking shack. Victory has never felt so much like defeat. Harry steps into the headmaster's office, intending to put the Hallows away to end the cycle. Instead, the cycle answers back. The resurrection stone burns in his palm. The Elder Wand thrums. And somewhere deep in the Ministry, in the Department of Mysteries, a veil shivers as if something on the other side has been waiting. There is a flash that cuts through the grief like a knife. He dies again. Only this time, he wakes up. July 1991. The cupboard under the stairs. The night everything changed, rewound. 11-year-old bones, 11-year-old scars, but a mind that remembers every Horcrux, every betrayal, every name on the memorial wall. What if the boy who lived didn't just get a scar from Voldemort, but a second timeline from the Hallows themselves? We are not going to spend this story dissecting the spellwork. Was it the Deathly Hallows completing a circuit? A last curse from Voldemort backfiring through the Elder Wand? An unspeakable experiment in time gone catastrophically right? The mechanism is a mystery by design, a question mark in the sky. The point is not how the clock was broken. The point is what Harry does with the hands reset. Here are the rules of that reset. Harry keeps everything that matters and loses everything that made it easy. He remembers the war in brutal detail. The way Sirius fell through the veil, the way Remus's body looked in the Great Hall, the way Dumbledore's choices carved children into soldiers. He carries tactical experience, battle reflexes, advanced magic theory, the map of every Horcrux burned into his thoughts. But his body is 11. His magical core is small, untrained, limited. He can't summon a blazing stag Patronus on day one. He can barely hold a Lumos steady with hands that still shake from nightmares. Emotionally, he is 20, trapped in a child's skin. That is the thesis of this story. A war veteran sent back to primary school. A commander forced to sit at the Dursleys' table and ask for more potatoes. He knows how Dumbledore manipulated him. He knows how Voldemort consumed himself. Every choice he makes now balances on that razor edge between them. How do you save people without turning them into pieces on a board? How do you plan 3 moves ahead without becoming the very general you once hated? Narratively, we're going to walk the whole road again, year by year, from the first Hogwarts letter to the last wand raised. But this time, Harry is not stumbling blind. When Hagrid knocks down the door, Harry is already calculating how to break from Privet Drive without tipping his hand. When he meets Ron and Hermione, he is already measuring trust against memory, trying to rebuild friendships without puppeteering them. Every cannon beat returns, but under quiet siege. The stone in first year, the chamber in second, Sirius and the Ministry in third and fifth. The tournament, the Horcrux hunt, all of it replayed with one impossible advantage: foresight. And one non-negotiable vow: Sirius and Remus do not die this time. This is that story, redrawing the divergence from Privet Drive, not Godric's Hollow. The divergence doesn't start at Godric's Hollow. It starts in a cupboard. Not the night everything changed, but the morning everything repeats. Harry wakes to darkness and dust, and the thin, stale air of Privet Drive. His heart is hammering as if he's still on the battlefield, wand in hand, Voldemort's last curse hanging in the air. He reaches for his wand. His fingers close on spider webs and splintered wood. Smaller fingers, bones too light, wrist too thin. The boy who lived has been folded back into an 11-year-old frame. This is not the usual escape hatch of fanfiction, where Sirius bursts through the door and carries a baby away from the ruins. What if there is no rescue from the Dursleys at all? In this story, the cupboard years happened. Once. Harry remembers every bruise Vernon's meaty hand ever left, every meal scraped away, every letter the Ministry sent that never reached his fingers because Vernon burned it over the sink. Those memories don't vanish. They stack. Above him, Dudley's footsteps thud toward the bathroom. The pipes rattle. Dust sifts down. It's achingly familiar, and that familiarity is what makes it horrifying, because Harry realizes, with a cold, surgical clarity, that he is back at the starting line of the war. He flexes his hand again, testing. No calluses from endless hours of gripping a wand in battle, no scars from the locket cutting into his skin. When he reaches inward for magic, it answers, thin, raw, untrained. Not the roaring tide that once met Voldemort's killing curse and held. He has lost power, reach, reputation, but he has not lost knowledge. For a moment, resentment surges. He could scream. He could pound on the cupboard door, demand that someone explain why he has to live this again. Why the dead are still dead, and he is the one dragged backward through time. The grief of it could cut through the grief like a knife. He doesn't scream. Instead, something in him pivots. Privet Drive is no longer a childhood prison. It's hostile territory. Temporary. A staging ground. He catalogues assets and constraints with the same cool focus he once used planning Horcrux raids. The letters will come. Hagrid will come. The stone, the chamber, the tournament, the Department of Mysteries, fixed points he can now approach as operations, not surprises. The question isn't whether the war comes, it's how prepared he is when it does. And somewhere out there, Sirius and Remus are still walking through their first timeline. Sirius is rotting in Azkaban, replaying the night everything changed. Remus is alone, convinced his entire world is dead or imprisoned. Neither of them knows that their godson has already buried them once. Neither of them knows he is lying in a cupboard, planning to reach them years early and tear their fates off the rails. Harry lies awake in the dark, listening to the house breathe. He thinks of Sirius falling through the veil, of Remus on the Great Hall floor, of Fred, Tonks, Snape, Dumbledore, of every name carved into the wall like a scar. What if none of them have to die this time? He makes a silent vow, there on the thin mattress, fingers curled around nothing. No one he loves dies if he can help it. Not again. If that means lying to Dumbledore, he will. If that means outmaneuvering Voldemort years before the Dark Lord expects opposition, he's ready. If that means breaking whatever rules of time threw him back here, he'll find the edges and push. This is that story. The moment Harry Potter stops being a victim of fate and starts trying to break it. The cupboard door creaks, and the war begins early. A war general in a cupboard. Harry's new mindset. The cupboard is small. Harry is not. He comes awake between a spider's web and the underside of the stairs. Heart already steady, breath already measured, mind moving in clean, tactical lines. The war is gone. The war is everywhere. He catalogues before he remembers to breathe. One bolt on the outside of the door, stiff but not rusted. A thin gap under the wood, enough to watch shadows, not enough to slip a wand through. No wand anyway. He notes the pattern of light from the hall, the distance to the front door, the weight of footsteps overhead. Vernon is heavier. Dudley drags his feet. Petunia walks on the edges of her shoes. Brisk, efficient, a metronome of resentment. Once he mapped Death Eater patrols around a burning village with this same cold precision. Now he maps Privet Drive. Windows, 2 on the ground floor, 1 in the kitchen, latch weak from Petunia's obsessive cleaning. Back garden gate, squeaks on the pull, not the push. Dudley's schedule, he can already predict it. Television, fridge, whining. School holidays mean more surveillance, but also more distractions. Threats and assets. Bars that will one day cage his window. The cupboard that is a cell but also cover. Every detail filed away the way he once memorized Horcrux locations. The door slams above. His body flinches. It is an 11-year-old flinch, sharp and instinctive, shoulders curling in, breath catching. His mind does not follow. The boy who lived through the Battle of Hogwarts lies very still and lets the adrenaline wash past like a wave hitting rock. He has walked into the Forbidden Forest to die. Vernon Dursley shouting is noise, not danger. Get up, now. The voice comes with a memory that cuts through the grief like a knife. Fred laughing in the room of requirement. Fred falling, the wall exploding. For a second, the cupboard is full of dust and screams and the smell of blood on stone. Then it is just dust and old socks again. Harry opens his eyes. Choice. That's what this is. The night everything changed, he made a choice to walk to his death. This morning, in this cupboard, he makes a smaller one. He will not waste this second war on the Dursleys. He slides out when the door yanks open, blinking against the light he already knows will come. Vernon's purple face, Petunia's pinched mouth, Dudley hovering, eager for a show. Once their contempt was the world. Now they are background actors in a story that has already moved past them. Cook the bacon, Petunia snaps. Bacon, and somewhere in his skull, Remus and Tonks are still on the great hall floor, pale and still beneath enchanted candles. Somewhere, Snape is bleeding out in a boathouse. Somewhere, Sirius is falling through a veil. He reaches for the frying pan with a steady hand. He does not argue. He does not beg for a birthday, or a kind word, or a scrap of approval he no longer needs. The hunger for their love died the night he watched them ignore letters from Hogwarts while he starved. Now, they are temporary jailers guarding a door he already knows will open. Hagrid will come. The letter will come. His name is already inked on Hogwarts rolls and whispered in ministry corridors. The boy who lived is a legend waiting to be reissued. What if he uses that legend? This time, instead of being used by it. So he plays along. Small, quiet, compliant. He keeps his eyes down, his ears open, his temper on a leash. He cannot risk Vernon's fury getting so loud it attracts the wrong attention. cannot risk any injury that might derail September 1st. Not when Voldemort's future depends on him boarding that train. But beneath the mask, he is already planning how to nudge Dumbledore without revealing too much, how to reach Sirius before Azkaban breaks him, how to make the Ministry listen without showing his hand, how to kill a snake years before it coils around Hogwarts. The pan sizzles, grease pops against his skin. He does not flinch this time. Can someone who has already killed, already led, convincingly pretend to be an ignorant child again? Or will the mask crack the moment a half-giant knocks down the door and says, "You're a wizard, Harry," to a boy who already knows exactly what that war will cost? That question hangs over the kitchen table with the smell of bacon. And when the first owl taps the window, the answer will begin to write itself. Letters, owls, and calculated defiance. The tap at the glass is soft. Too soft for the way it hits him. Parchment, green ink, that looping old-fashioned hand. For a heartbeat, Harry can't breathe, because this is the exact curve of letters he saw the first time and the last time, the same script that once meant escape and now drags the whole war back through his chest. He knows the words before he opens it. "We are pleased to inform you." The boy who lived stares at the address and feels the timeline snap into place like a bone setting. Mr. H. Potter, the cupboard under the stairs. It's not surprise. It's a brutal, almost tender nostalgia that cuts through the grief like a knife. This is the hinge of his life, the night everything changed, and he's standing on it again. Vernon rips it away, blustering, just as canon demands. But this Harry is not passive. While his uncle snarls about no funny business, Harry's eyes are on the edges of the parchment, the faint shimmer of tracking charms, the tug of distant wards. He memorizes the precise formatting of the address, the way the magic pins him in place. He lets Vernon storm out, then quietly retrieves a second letter from under the mat, slipping it into the loose floorboard beneath his bed. Evidence, anchor, a thread back to Hogwarts, and beyond it, to Dumbledore. What if the letters themselves are a map of control? That question hums beneath his skin. That night, he doesn't sleep in the cupboard. He curls up on the floor of the sitting room instead, eyes on the cat flap, counting breaths. Morning brings a new envelope. Mr. H. Potter. The sitting room floor. The magic has followed the change effortlessly, adjusting with unnerving precision. He pushes harder. He spends a night in Dudley's second bedroom before it's officially his. The next letter obliges. Mr. H. Potter. The smallest bedroom. Each adjustment is tiny, almost petty, but each one tells him something terrifyingly clear. The system does not care what the Dursleys call him, where they shove him, what the Ministry thinks. It cares where he is. It cares that he is under these wards, in this house, on this street. He can feel the tracing line if he closes his eyes. A distant pull to Scotland, to stone and secrets, and behind that, the cooler, older presence of the man who arranged all of this. Dumbledore's chessboard, reassembling itself around a child who is not a child. When the owls become a storm and Vernon bolts for the car, Harry doesn't resist. He helps load the luggage. He ducks when letters smash through the fireplace. He plays his role, an obedient, bewildered boy, while inside he's cataloguing spellwork, pressure, pattern. This is not chaos. This is insistence. The hut on the rock smells of salt and damp and fear. Dudley whimpers. Petunia hovers, Vernon clutches the shotgun like it's a wand that might finally answer him. Harry sits on the cold floor, back to the wall, eyes on the door. He's not really waiting for his Hogwarts letter anymore. He's waiting for his first ally. He counts the seconds with a soldier's patience. He remembers the exact crash of impact, the way the door buckles, the silhouette against the lightning. He remembers Hagrid's grief when Sirius died, Hagrid's roar when the giants turned, Hagrid's body thrown aside in the Battle of Hogwarts. How many dead does this gentle half-giant carry in his heart already, without knowing? The wind howls, the sea hammers the rocks. Harry is wandless, but not powerless. Magic hums under his skin, restrained by choice alone. What if he refused to open that door? What if he stunned Hagrid, ran, broke the script before it even began? He doesn't. Not yet. Staring into the dark, he whispers to the storm, voice low, steady, adult in a child's throat. Come on, Hagrid. We've got a war to win. And somewhere beyond the waves, something huge is already crossing the sky toward him, carrying a pink umbrella, a birthday cake, and the first test of whether Harry Potter will still let himself be led, or if, this time, he intends to lead. Because when the door finally falls, the future will not be the only thing crashing in. Hagrid's entrance, Harry's performance. The door does not simply open. It detonates. Wood explodes inward under a giant fist, sea wind knifing through the hut as the frame shudders in its bolts. For Dudley, it's terror. For Vernon, it's outrage. For the boy who lived twice, standing barefoot on the cold floor, it's déjà vu so sharp it might as well cut through the grief like a knife. Hagrid fills the doorway, lantern haloing wild hair and beetle-black eyes. The pink umbrella is clutched in one massive hand. Harry's gaze goes straight to it, not to the cake, not to the beard, to the illegal wand, splintered and hidden in plain sight, and to the way Hagrid hesitates on the threshold, as if he can feel Dumbledore's orders hanging around his shoulders like chains. Sorry about that, Hagrid rumbles, almost gentle as he sets the door back against the wall. Almost. Couldn't make a proper entrance through them letters, could I? Harry's laugh is soft, perfectly awed. Performance. He widens his eyes, lets his shoulders curl in. He has faced Voldemort in a graveyard, watched Sirius fall through a veil, seen Remus dead on a great hall floor. Tonight he pretends a giant is the most astonishing thing he's ever seen. What if I overplay it, he thinks, even as he breathes, "Who are you?" on cue. Hagrid explains. Hogwarts. Magic. The war in the vaguest possible terms. Harry listens, tracking every omission. No mention of Horcruxes. No mention of the Department of Mysteries, of the Ministry's cowardice, of how many children died before anyone in power admitted the truth. Hagrid's loyalty is absolute, but his knowledge is a patchwork quilt with dangerous holes. The acting challenge is brutal. Harry must feign ignorance about his parents while remembering James's laugh and Lily's hand in his hair. He must blink at the word wizard as if it's new, when he has cast unforgivables in a war no one in this room even knows has been won. He must flinch at Voldemort's name on schedule while knowing more about Tom Riddle's soul than Hagrid ever will. So he tests the edges. You said Gringotts is the safest place there is. What happens if someone breaks in? A harmless question for an 11-year-old. A surgical probe for a veteran who remembers a dragon and a shattered vault. Hagrid shifts, uncomfortable. No one's ever done it. Not properly. Goblins have their hide. Harry files away the non-answer, tries again. And Petunia said he was a murderer. Did the Ministry ever fix that? That lands. Hagrid's face closes, grief and guilt flickering through his eyes. That's Ministry business, Harry. Best not worry yourself. Harry immediately softens, lets his gaze drop. Sorry, I just wondered. He lets the apology hang there until Hagrid relaxes. Boundary located. How did the Ministry handle the war? Harry asks, quiet, almost swallowed by the storm. Did they help Dumbledore? Or only after? Hagrid freezes. This is not a first-year question. Professor Dumbledore did what had to be done, he says finally. Ministry came round in the end. Harry feels the old, complicated storm rise up. Love, anger, betrayal, gratitude. The night everything changed on a tower. The calculated secrets, the necessary lies, he buries all of it behind a child's shy smile. Is he nice? Harry asks instead. His first strategic lie is not in what he says, but in what he withholds. He decides in that moment to let Dumbledore underestimate him for as long as possible. Not a weapon. Not yet. A piece off the board. This is that story. Later, as they step out into the rain and head for the boat, Harry glances back at the Black Sea. In another life, this was escape from the Dursleys, freedom. Now it is an opening move. He doesn't think of leaving Privet Drive. He thinks of a castle, of Horcruxes, of friends dead on cold stone. He sees the war laid out again, a long, bloody chessboard. Only this time, he isn't the pawn. He is the player, and there are new pieces to save. Diagon Alley, revisited. Power, money, and memory. Diagon Alley should have been wonder. It had been once. Now, as Harry steps out of the leaky cauldron's Brit archway, the cobblestones rush up at him like ghosts. What if this street is the first battlefield he can actually change? The cauldrons gleam in the shop fronts, brass and pewter catching the sun. Owls hoot irritably from elops. Children press faces to windows, breath-fogging glass. Canon Diagon Alley is ore and sugar quills. For the boy who lived who has already died once, it is something sharper. Every signboard is a memory. Every doorway is a grave. He sees the spot where, years from now, he'll watch Death Eaters drag Ollivander away. He remembers the day he walked here under Polyjuice, hunted, the war pressing in on all sides. The contrast cuts through the grief like a knife. Now the shopkeepers laugh. The Ministry posters are about cauldron-bottom thickness, and no one sees the war already coiled in their shadows. Gringotts looms ahead, white and crooked. Last time, this was a dragon's prison, a tomb of goblin grudges. Today, the goblins only glance at a small wizard and his giant. Key, the teller rasps. Hagrid fumbles. Harry doesn't. He leans forward, voice polite, steady in a way no 11-year-old should be. I was told my parents left more than just this school vault. Are there other Potter accounts? Any sealed wills on file? The goblin's eyes narrow. Interest. Suspicion. Opportunity. In another life, Harry would have missed it. Now he tracks every flicker. There are matters that require guardian presence, the goblin says slowly, and blood verification. Good. That means leverage. That means the Potter estate, trusts, maybe old magic Dumbledore never mentioned. Money he can use to fund Sirius's defense before Azkaban can swallow him, to make sure Remus never has to choose between Wolfsbane and Rent again. Not a tale of a child grateful for a handful of galleons, but of a strategist quietly arming himself. The cart rattles into the depths. Wind tears at his hair. Once this was thrilling. Now, as torches smear into streaks of orange, Harry stares into the dark and thinks of Vault 713, of the future break-in, of the dragon's ragged wings beating over a burning bank. He glances toward the deeper tunnels, high security vaults, curses layered on curses. Somewhere down there, in another path, the Lestrange vault waits with a cup that isn't just a cup. How early can he start dismantling Voldemort's immortality? How many deaths vanish if he pulls the right artifact from the board, years ahead of schedule? And how close does that bring him to the man who played the same long game with his own soul? Back in the sunlight, they turn toward Ollivander's. The bell's chime is thin and eerie, the dust motes hanging like suspended ash. The night everything changed for him once was here too. Wand, name, destiny, all tied together under that pale gaze. "Ah," Ollivander whispers, stepping from the gloom. "I wondered when I'd be seeing you, Mr. Potter." In the original story, those words were mystery. Now they are data. Harry listens to every syllable, weighing them. When Ollivander speaks of strange, powerful magic, of the wand choosing the wizard, Harry hears not just prophecy, but the echo of Hallow's law, of elder trees and unbeatable wands. Twin cores, Phoenix Feather, Voldemort. He knows the script by heart, but he feigns surprise, schooling his face into wide-eyed shock while his mind races. Does Ollivander know more about the connection than he admits? About the Brother Wands? About the way they will lock in that graveyard? What if this old man is another piece Dumbledore never fully used? The Holly Wand settles in his hand, warm, familiar. It hums up his arm like recognition, like a second chance bound in polished wood. Outside, the world feels brighter, almost too bright. Hagrid steers him toward the bookshop, booming about spellbooks and quills. Flourish and Blots is crowded, ink and parchment thick in the air. Towers of Hogwarts texts loom. The Standard Book of Spells, a history of magic, magical drafts and potions. Once, these were doors to an unknown universe. Now Harry scans the spines and feels an almost nauseating dissonance. These are primers, children's guides. Nowhere in these pages is Fiendfire. Nowhere is Sectum Sempra, or the counter-curses he bled to learn in the Room of Requirement while friends fell around him. How is he supposed to sit through lessons on Wingardium Leviosa when he has cast Unforgivables in a war? How does he pretend to be the boy who lived when he remembers being the man who killed? His fingers brush a first-year defense text. It promises jinxes and simple counters. It does not promise how to disarm a Death Eater or how to shield a friend from a killing curse. He realizes, with a quiet, chilling certainty, that Hogwarts will not teach him what he needs to win the war again. He will have to teach himself. And this time, he will not wait for the monsters to come to him, choosing allies before Hogwarts even starts. He closes the defense text, and the decision settles in his bones. If Hogwarts will not train the commander the war needs, then the boy who lived will walk into Hogwarts already at war. Madame Malkin's smells of dust and pins and soft, expensive fabric. In another life, This was where an arrogant blonde boy insulted Hagrid and Muggleborns, and Harry simply bristled. This time, he watches. First year 2, Draco Malfoy asks, climbing onto the stool. His voice is still high, still unsure. The robes woman fusses with measuring tape. Harry studies angles. "Yeah," Harry says lightly. "Parents bring you." A flicker. Father's at the ministry. Important business. The way he says father is reverent and afraid. Not Lucius. Father. It lands in Harry's mind as neatly as a chess piece. What if, instead of rejecting Draco outright, he mapped the fractures in the Malfoy armor years before they matter? Must be. A lot to live up to, Harry murmurs. Being a Malfoy. Draco straightens, defensive on instinct. We know our place. Father says the right families have a duty. There it is. The doctrine Lucius poured into his son. Harry files it away. Duty. Fear. The hunger to impress. Leverage for a future where a scared boy on a broom becomes a man who might refuse Voldemort if someone offers him another script. He lets the conversation drift, neither friend nor enemy. A neutral sun for Draco to orbit, not yet realizing gravity has changed. King's Cross is louder than he remembers. "Steam!" shouts the metallic screech of trolleys. And over it all, a voice that cut through the grief like a knife the night everything changed. "Packed with muggles, this platform," Molly Weasley says, shepherding her brood. Harry does not have to turn to know the exact pattern of her freckles, the way her eyes crinkle when she laughs, the way they harden when one of her children is hurt or dead. Fred's joke about muggles and barriers, George's echo, Percy's pompous lecture, Ginny's shy, aching stare at the scar on his forehead she hasn't met yet. Harry stands in the crowd, feeling the weight of futures. Fred's body in the rubble, Remus and Tonks on the floor of the castle, Ron bleeding in a forest, Ginny lying cold in the chamber if he miscalculates. He steps toward Ron deliberately. This is not the desperate lunge of a lonely child. This is recruitment. Want a hand? Harry nods at the trunk Ron is wrestling. I'm Harry. Harry Potter. In the old story, Harry laughed, basked in it. Now he feels the distance it puts between them. Just Harry's fine, he says, voice easy. You're Ron, right? Your mum helped me with the barrier. He offers warmth, but he also watches. How does Ron flinch when his brothers tease? How quickly does envy spark when the twins mention the ministry? When Percy flashes his prefect badge in future years? He remembers the Horcrux locket twisting Ron's insecurities into knives. The Yule Ball, the way jealousy rotted what should have been joy. This time, he will not be blind to those fault lines. Friendship, yes, but managed with the same care he'd give a battle map. He boards the train later than he did before, eyes scanning the platform for a bushy-haired girl who is not here yet but might be. Hermione Granger, the anchor who dragged him back from the edge of becoming another Dumbledore. The strategist who saw patterns even he missed. The moral compass that kept him from answering war with war alone. How much can he tell her when she arrives breathless and bossy and brilliant? About Horcruxes, about Peter, about the ministry, about the way Voldemort will split his soul and the world to win. How much truth can their friendship bear before it breaks? The whistle shrieks. Steam billows. Harry plants his foot on the train step and pauses. Not a lost boy anymore. a commander re-entering the battlefield under a child's face. Behind him, Molly calls her goodbyes. Somewhere ahead, a compartment door will slide open on a future that has already happened once. This time, who will he let sit beside him? And who, without knowing it, is he about to save or doom? By that choice, the Sorting Hat meets a twice-lived soul. The ceiling of the Great Hall is a storm pretending to be calm. Candles float. Children whisper. The war hasn't started yet. On paper. For the boy who lived twice, it never ended. Harry stands in line, smaller than he remembers. Robes too new, scar prickling under the weight of eyes that don't know they'll die. McGonagall calls his name. The whisper rolls through the hall, harmless for now. He walks to the stool like it's a march back to the front. The hat drops over his eyes. Oh, the voices in his skull at once, old and dry as parchment. Oh my, the hat had expected nerves, curiosity, that familiar flicker of defiance. Instead, it hits a wall of memory that cut through the grief like a knife. Bodies in the Great Hall. Fred, Remus, Tonks, Snape's last breath in a boathouse of blood. It reels. You are not 11, it says, and the thread of shock in its tone is almost human. What have you done, Potter? Harry doesn't flinch. Time reversed, he answers. Not with words, but with impressions. The Elder Wand, the forest, Voldemort falling like a puppet with its strings cut. I died. I came back, and then I woke up in the cupboard again. A second chance, the hat murmurs, tasting the thought. Dangerous magic. Dangerous mind. It dives deeper, finds leadership hammered in fire, the instinct to command, to manipulate, to move people like chess pieces around the ministry, around Hogwarts, around a war. Ambition coils there now, cold and coiled and utterly focused. Ah, Slytherin. The whisper is no longer idle temptation. In Slytherin, it presses, you would be among those who will follow the Dark Lord. You know their names, their families, their weaknesses. Imagine undermining his base before he even returns. Imagine steering them away, or breaking them from within. Images flare unbidden, sitting beside Draco on the train, not as rival but as patient saboteur, feeding half-truths to future Death Eaters, nudging the House of Cunning toward a different war. What if he could turn the snakes before Voldemort ever had them? What if this is the smarter choice Dumbledore never made? You are ambitious now, the hat says. You plan. You deceive. You would do well there. Gryffindor is safer, Harry counters. Ron, Hermione, the Weasleys, the people who kept me human the first time. If I go under with Slytherin, who pulls me back? Who stops me when I start thinking like Dumbledore? Or worse? The hat sifts that fear, finds Sirius's laugh, Remus's tired smile, the crushing moment when they lay dead on the Great Hall floor, finds the vow he made the night everything changed the second time. Never again, no matter the cost. Gryffindor gives you comfort, it says. Slytherin gives you tools. I'll take both, Harry answers. Sharp. I'll be brave in public and cunning in private. But I need my anchor. I need my family. A long pause. Even the storm on the ceiling seems to hold its breath. Very well, the hat sighs, old and resigned and a little afraid. Again, then. But understand this, Potter. You are not the same boy I sorted once. Be careful. A second chance cuts both ways. The hat barely finishes the sentence before it shouts its verdict to the hall. And somewhere at the Slytherin table, a pale boy with a pointed face looks up, feeling the faintest brush of a future that just changed without his consent. Year 1 replayed, stone, staff, and subterfuge. The hall is still echoing with the hat's shout when the future slams back into him. Slytherin. Again, the word lands differently when you're the boy who lived and the man who died for a war no one here has fought yet. Harry slides onto the green and silver bench, every movement measured. This is that story. Not wide-eyed wonder and lucky escapes, but a veteran wrapped in an 11-year-old skin, sitting down among the children who will one day wear dark marks or die refusing. Classes become his battlefield. In charms, his wand wants to snap through swish and flick into full fluid combat arcs. He reins it in. His feather rises exactly as high as Ron's, no higher. Hermione's, though, he nudges. A quiet, "Try loosening your grip, Mia," under his breath, the nickname slipping out before he can stop it. Her feather soars to the ceiling. The professor beams. Hermione flushes, surprised, already rewriting her story from bossy outsider to brilliant, necessary ally. With Neville, the work is slower, a steady hand on his elbow in potions, a murmured reminder about clockwise versus counterclockwise. When the cauldron doesn't melt, Neville's relief hits Harry like a memory of a boy screaming in a burning corridor. What if this time he never has to see that? And then there is Snape. Occlumency lessons that cut through the grief like a knife. A man who died spitting out a dough-shaped Patronus and a lifetime of regret. Now, Harry watches him with a strategist's eye. When Snape sneers, Harry answers with precise, clipped responses, just correct enough to be undeniable, just insolent enough to test the edges. What would I get if I added powdered root of asphodel to an infusion of wormwood? In the first timeline, he had no idea. Now he meets Snape's gaze and answers evenly, "A sleeping potion so strong, it's called the Draught of Living Death, sir." No triumph, no flinch, just information laid down like a piece on a board. Snape's eyes flicker. Suspicion, yes, but also the barest hint of recalculation. How far will you go for me this time, Professor? How far will I let you? He spots Quirrell's possession almost at once. The stutter is wrong, the eyes worse. The smell of old smoke and snake rot clings to him. Harry remembers the stone, Fluffy, the traps, Dumbledore's calm decision to use an 11-year-old as bait. He files it under, "Not again." He studies the chessboard of the year, the troll, the midnight duel that never needs to happen, the mirror of Irised, and the headmaster who will stand in front of it and talk about choice while quietly arranging children like pieces in a war. What if he lets Quirrell get close? Lets Voldemort stretch himself thin chasing the stone, only to spring a trap with teachers ready, auras summoned, contingencies layered. He spends 3 sleepless nights in a Slytherin 4 poster, tracing casualty lists that haven't happened yet onto the canopy with his eyes. Every version ends the same way. Too many dead. He can't gamble the lives of first years on the hope that adults will move fast enough, that the Ministry will listen, that Dumbledore will choose transparency over control. So he compromises, but not that far. When the trapdoor night comes, he walks toward it on purpose. Not alone. Hermione is at his side, wand steady, already drilled in shield charms he accidentally mentioned weeks ago. Neville follows, jaw clenched, pockets full of plants that are not in any first-year syllabus. They are not stumbling into Dumbledore's test this time. They are executing their first coordinated mission. And somewhere above them, in an office full of silver instruments and secrets, a very old man feels the pattern slip just a little. On the night everything changed once already, and is about to change again. Testing Dumbledore, trust, lies, and lemon drops. The hospital wing is too bright, too clean for a room that has held so many dead and dying in another life. Harry lies still against the pillows, breathing evenly, when the door opens on a soft swish of robes and lemon and smoke. Albus Dumbledore walks in as if nothing in the pattern has truly changed. What if, Harry thinks, this is the moment that matters more than the stone? Not the troll, not Quirrell's burning skin, but this quiet conversation, the first test, the first move in a war Dumbledore doesn't yet know, has already been fought, lost, and fought again. "Ah, Harry," Dumbledore says, eyes very blue, very kind. "You have been through rather a lot." Harry lets his gaze drift as if dazed. Inside he is counting. Every pause, every omission, every time the old man's fingers tighten on the bedrail. Dumbledore speaks of courage, of love, of how Voldemort cannot bear to touch the boy who lived. He mentions Lily, sacrifice, protection. He does not mention Horcruxes. He does not mention that the thing in Quirrell's skull is only a fragment, that the diary is waiting in a vault, that the ring will blacken Dumbledore's hand and cut through the grief like a knife. Harry files each absence away like evidence. When Dumbledore asks how he found the mirror, Harry mirrors him back. Partial truths. "I followed him, sir. I thought he was after the stone." True. "I just wanted to stop him." Also true. He feigns confusion over the magic itself, lets his voice wobble at the right places. He knows exactly how the protections were layered. He helped Hermione and Sirius pick them apart in another timeline. "Do you know why Voldemort wanted the stone, Harry?" "I suppose he wanted to come back," Harry answers, blinking. "Properly. With a body." He leaves out the word again. He watches Dumbledore's eyes flicker, just once, at the edge of that guess. Concern. Calculation. Something almost like fear. How much of this is care, Harry wonders, and how much is steering? How much is the man who taught him about choices, and how much is the general who sent a 17-year-old walking into death with a hallows in his hand and a Horcrux in his chest? He owes Dumbledore his life. He owes Dumbledore his nightmares. Both are true, both live in his bones. So he makes a new choice, not again. While Dumbledore talks of in time and when you are older, Harry is already building a second track in his mind, his own network, starting with Hermione, then Sirius and Remus once he can reach them. His own research into Horcruxes, Hallows, the Department of Mysteries, the Ministry's blind spots. His own schedule for ending this, years before the night everything changed the first time. Dumbledore finishes with lemon drops and gentle smiles. Offers of help, warnings about fame, a grandfatherly pat on the blankets. Harry smiles back, small and grateful and perfectly rehearsed. "Thank you, sir." He swings his legs off the bed and walks toward the doors, hospital gown rustling, heart pounding with plans. Behind him, Dumbledore watches the boy who lived leave. Something in Harry's gait is wrong, too measured. Something in his eyes is old. For the first time in many years, Albus Dumbledore cannot name the pattern he is seeing. What if, he thinks, I have misjudged this child? He reaches for a lemon drop. His hand hesitates in midair, and that hesitation is the crack Harry intends to drive an entire war through. Pattern break. A war council in the Gryffindor common room. Night falls hard over Hogwarts. The feast is a memory. The Sorting Hat's song, the whispers about the boy who lived, all of it fades under the low crackle of a dying fire. The Gryffindor common room is almost empty. The portraits snore, the armchairs loom like sleeping beasts. Only 3 children remain awake, or 2 children and 1 soldier hiding in a child's skin. Harry chooses his spot carefully, not the heroic armchair by the fire, the corner sofa, half in shadow, where voices vanish into old stone. He waits until the last first year trudges up the staircase, until the room breathes out and goes still. Ron, he says quietly. Hermione, can we talk? Properly. The phrasing is wrong for 11. Too measured, too grave. It cuts through the leftover excitement like a knife. Ron blinks, halfway to a yawn. We're talking now, aren't we? His tone is light, but his eyes flick to the darkness outside the windows, then back to Harry's face. He's already reading danger he can't name. Hermione straightens, fingers still resting on the spine of Hogwarts. A history. Is something wrong? Did someone say something after you left the headmaster? What if he told them everything? The war? The dead? The way Voldemort's laugh echoed over broken stone the night everything changed. The Ministry fallen, Sirius through the veil, Remus on the floor of the Great Hall, Fred's body, Tonks' stillness. What if he laid the future on this table and watched it crush them? He doesn't. Not yet. Nothing's wrong, Harry lies, and the lie tastes old. I think we should decide something. About us. Ron snorts. Only been friends for, 6 hours? Bit fast, mate. The joke lands, thin but real. A pressure valve. Harry lets it pass. Hogwarts isn't safe, he says instead. Not really. There's a troll in the dungeons in a few weeks. There's a possessed teacher. There's a basilisk under. He stops himself just in time, pulse spiking. There could be anything. And the teachers won't always be there. Or they'll be wrong. Hermione's mouth opens to protest, then closes. She remembers the way McGonagall glanced at Harry's scar, the way Dumbledore watched him leave. There was something there. Calculation. Secrets. That's not fair, she says, but it wavers. The staff are very experienced. Professor Dumbledore defeated Grindelwald. Dumbledore's not God, Harry says too sharply. He softens it. He can't see everything. He can't be everywhere. What if he makes a mistake? What if the rules don't cover what really happens? There. The first test. Hermione hugs the book closer. Rules exist for a reason. If everyone just broke them whenever they felt like it, we'd have chaos. That's how wars start. Wars start when bad people count on good people following rules, Harry answers. His voice is low, steady, far too old. I'm not saying we smash everything. I'm saying if it's a choice between a rule and someone getting hurt, I'm choosing the person. Every time, she whispers, even if a professor says no, especially then. Harry says, silence stretches. The fire pops, sending a small spray of sparks up the chimney. Hermione looks at him, really looks, the haunted focus. The way his hands are too still. She doesn't have the words for trauma or survivor's guilt or the weight of dead faces, but she feels the pressure of it pressing out from under his skin. "That's dangerous," she says at last. "But if someone is really in danger, and it's the only way," she swallows. A rule shifts infinitesimally inside her. "Then we'd have to be very careful, very precise." Harry nods once. Seed planted. She will argue, catalogue, demand plans and backup plans. She will become the mind of their war. He turns to Ron. "What about you?" "I don't fancy detentions for fun, if that's what you're asking." His grin flashes, then fades when Harry doesn't smile back. "But if it's us, if it's you two, if Hogwarts throws something nasty at us, then yeah, I'm in. Even if a professor yells, even if Dumbledore himself has a go." "You don't even know what in means," Harry says, and there's a faint, dry edge of humor. Ron shrugs. "Don't need to. You looked at the hat like it had cursed you, and you walked out of that office like you'd been told you were dead. I'm not letting my first proper friend do whatever that was, alone." Something in Harry's chest twists. In another life, this boy walked into a forest with him. In another life, this girl stood bleeding at his side in the Department of Mysteries. In too many lives, they died because he was the center of the story. Not this time. He leans back, letting the firelight throw their faces into brief flickering relief. Hermione, already calculating exceptions to rules she hasn't met. Ron, already loyal to a future he can't see. "Then we watch each other's backs," Harry says quietly. "No matter what Hogwarts throws at us, no matter who stands in the way, we protect each other first." They both nod. A childish promise, a binding vow. Harry doesn't tell them the real decision he makes in that moment. These two will be his first line of defense against the future. He will put knowledge in their hands, wands in their grasp, choices in their control. But he will not, under any circumstances, let them die for him again. This is that story. Summer before year 2. Dobby, Lucius, and the diary trap. Summer at Privet Drive is a holding pattern. Heat, hedges, and the faint smell of bleach. But in the smallest bedroom, the boy who lived is not a bored child staring at bars on his window. He is a veteran waiting for contact. The contact arrives with a crack. Dobby's huge eyes glow in the dark, like lanterns. In one timeline, Harry panicked, stammered, chased the elf around the room while Vernon raged outside. In this one, he doesn't move from his bed. He only lifts his head from the pillow, voice low, controlled. "Close the door quietly, Dobby. Sit on the chair, not the bed. We need to talk before my uncle explodes a blood vessel." The elf freezes. Obies. The house shakes with Vernon's distant ranting, but Harry's world narrows to those trembling hands and the T-Cozy hat. He remembers broken bones, rogue bludgers, that desperate warning about Hogwarts. He also remembers a sock and a book that was never just a book. What if, Harry thinks, the night everything changed in second year doesn't happen at all? Aloud, he says, "You're here because of Lucius Malfoy, because of something he's planning to put at Hogwarts, in a student's things. Harry Potter must not." Harry cuts him off. Not cruel, but surgical. He keeps a black diary in his study at the manor. Old, blank, smells faintly of smoke and rot when you open it. It belongs to Voldemort, not to your master. If that diary goes to Hogwarts, children will die. Again. Again, the word lands between them, wrong on an 11-year-old tongue. It makes the elf flinch. How does Harry Potter know what is in Malfoy's study? Dobby whispers, voice almost reverent, almost afraid. Harry holds his gaze. This is war, and this is a soldier who never got a chance to fight on the right side. Because I've seen what it does. I've seen a basilisk wake up. I'm giving you a choice, Dobby. Help me stop it, and I swear on my magic I will help you get free. The oath hums in the air, soft and sharp. It might as well cut through the grief like a knife. Dobby gasps, as if struck, tiny fingers digging into his knees. Harry Potter would free Dobby. Not yet, Harry says. Later, safely. You will not punish yourself. You will not sabotage my mail. You will watch your master. When he takes the diary to Diagon Alley, you will tell me where and when. And you will not, under any circumstances, let him give it to a red-haired girl. The precision of the command makes Dobby stare. Malfoy Manor corridors, Lucius's study door, the exact shelf where the diary rests. Harry describes them in detail he should not have. Every word chips at the elf's certainty. What if this child has walked those halls as a ghost from a story not yet told? When the bars go on the window and Ron's flying car appears, Harry plays along. He laughs, he shouts, he clings to the window frame with genuine relief. But every warm, ridiculous moment at the Burrow is double exposed in his mind. Molly fussing over his plate, Ginny flushing and dropping cutlery, Fred and George plotting. And beneath it all, a ticking black book that has not yet crossed their threshold. He watches Ginny with a soldier's eye, makes sure she never lingers alone in Flourish and Blots, positions himself between her and danger with the ease of habit, turning every joke, every shared glance into quiet reconnaissance. Sirius and Remus aren't here to flank him, so he builds a shield out of timing, attention, and the invisible map of what is supposed to happen. The day in Diagon Alley, the air is thick with perfume and parchment dust. Flourish and Blots is crowded, noisy, a perfect stage. Lucius Malfoy sweeps in, cane tapping, sneer polished. In canon, he is an intimidating aristocrat. Today, to Harry's eyes, he is something else. A delivery system. Harry doesn't look at the man. He looks at the cane, the gloved hand, the subtle bulge of a book hidden among Ginny's second-hand texts. He watches the moment Lucius moves to help Mrs. Weasley, watches Dobby's eyes flick to him from the doorway, terrified but resolute. Harry shifts one step closer, hand brushing the exact book he intends to intercept before it ever reaches the Burrow. He smiles, small and cold, at the trap closing. Lucius Malfoy walks past the boy who lived, carrying a piece of his dead master's soul. He has no idea he's the one being hunted, and he has no idea the hunter is 11. The chamber reopened, saving Ginny without dying. The diary never reaches Ginny Weasley. It vanishes in a quiet, almost unremarkable moment that will change the war. Harry times it to the second. Flourish and Blots, the day Lucius Malfoy innocently slips a book into Ginny's cauldron. He remembers the chaos from the first time through, the swirl of Lockhart's signatures and Ron's disgust and Molly's flustered apologies. This time, the boy who lived engineers the chaos. He trips. Ink flies. Lockhart shrieks about his robes. Molly lunges for Ginny's things. In that heartbeat, Harry's wand nudges the right book free. A silent summoning, shielded by bodies and noise, pulls the diary into his own stack. When the dust settles, Ginny has a slightly lighter cauldron, and no one is dead yet. Back in his room at the Burrow, the diary waits on the bedspread. Small, harmless, lethal. Dobby appears at his whisper, ears trembling. Harry doesn't order, he asks. Could Dobby, if needed, swap a schoolbook, hide something from Lucius, misdirect the Malfoys away from the Burrow? The elf's eager nod tells Harry what he already suspected. He's not the only one who has changed since the night everything changed. He could destroy the diary now. Basilisk Fang, Fiend Fire, even a carefully prepared ritual circle Sirius and Remus drilled into him in another lifetime. One decisive choice, and this fragment of Voldemort is gone. But what if he needs it? What if this is the only safe way to interrogate Tom Riddle about Horcrux creation, about early Death Eater recruitment, about which ministry officials were already compromised before the war even began? The temptation cuts through the grief like a knife, so he opens it. Ink swirls. Words answer. Tom Riddle writes with that careful prefect's hand, all charm and false humility. Harry plays his role, a curious, ambitious boy, annoyed with teachers, fascinated by power. He confides about being overlooked, about wanting to make his mark, about hearing rumors of the chamber. Each line is bait. In return, Tom talks about old pureblood families, about certain professors who understood him, about a headmaster who never suspected a thing. Harry files every name, every implication behind occlumency walls. Remus bled to teach him in the last timeline. More than once, Tom probes back, little flares of pressure at the edges of Harry's mind. Who are you really, Harry? Why do you hate me? Why do you already know these things? Harry retreats behind rehearsed adolescent frustration. He lets Tom underestimate him. When the attacks begin, Harry is ready. He walks the corridors at night, parcel tongue coiled on his tongue, listening. He maps the pipes with Hermione's help, discovering clues he already knows exist. He brews crude basilisk anti-venin in Moaning Myrtle's bathroom, a clumsy echo of the perfected potion he watched Snape develop years later. The descent into the chamber is not a blind charge. It's an operation. He brings mirrors to avoid the basilisk's gaze, a transfigured kite shield lined with reflective glass, a pocket full of conjured rooster's crow recordings, amplified by simple charms. He speaks to the basilisk in parcel tongue, not as prey, but as a commander who knows this creature died for him once and will not take him now. Ginny is still pale on the stone, Tom is still half-formed and hungry, but Harry is not the same. In the end, he doesn't stab blindly. He chooses, he presses the fang into the diary like a ritual, watching the ink scream and burn. This is not an accident of desperation, this is an execution. As the Horcrux dies, Harry feels fate shudder. One down, many to go. Everyone he destroys this early will push the story further off its rails. And somewhere above, in a castle of secrets and shifting loyalties, someone else has already noticed the pattern changing. Snape, secrets, and the first cracks in the mask. Someone has noticed the pattern changing, and of course, it's the one man trained to see lies in their first breath. Severus Snape assigns the detention 3 days after the chamber, not with a sneer in the Great Hall, not as public theatre, but with a quiet, flat, Mr. Potter, my office, 7 o'clock. That alone is a warning. Detention as interrogation, not punishment. The dungeons are cold, the air sharp with potion fumes and stone. Harry steps through the door with the easy balance of a duelist and then, remembering himself, slouches a fraction, lets his foot scuff the flagstones. It's a performance. Every movement is a choice. How long can he keep it up? Snape is already watching. Not his usual lazy contempt, but something narrower, colder. He gestures to the chair opposite his desk. Sit. No cauldrons, no lines to write. Just 2 chairs, a desk, and the boy who lived under a microscope. You have had, Snape says, voice soft as a drawn blade. An eventful year, the basilisk, the chamber, the diary that screamed when it died. He says none of those words, but they hang between them anyway. Harry keeps his gaze steady. Yes, sir. Twice now, Snape continues. You have found yourself at the epicenter of events that should have killed you. Once with Quirrell and the stone, now with a basilisk. Tell me, Potter, do you make a habit of surviving impossible situations, or does catastrophe merely follow you? How do you answer a question that has an entire war behind it? Harry picks the smallest truth. I don't go looking for them, sir. Snape's lip curls. No? Yet you knew a basilisk's gaze was lethal. You armed yourself with a rooster's crow and a mirror. He leans forward, and you knew enough to destroy that diary with basilisk venom. An impressive grasp of obscure dark magic for a 12-year-old who cannot consistently brew a boil cure. There it is, the first crack in the mask, not in Harry's, in Snape's curiosity, edged with fear. I read, Harry says. Too fast, too pat. Snape's eyes narrow. Indeed, then indulge my curiosity. The word is a threat. What precisely is a Horcrux? The room tilts. Harry's heart stops, then slams back into his ribs. He doesn't move, but the silence is an answer. Snape sees it. Of course he does. Occlumens always see the flinch. I did not say Horcrux, Potter. Snape's voice is very soft now, yet you heard it. You understood it. Why? Pattern interrupt. For a second, Harry is back in another dungeon. Older, bleeding while Snape snarls about occlumency and Voldemort rips through his mind. The word itself has weight. It cut through the grief like a knife the night everything changed in 5th year. He swallows. I've come across the term, Harry manages, in a book. What if I told you that term is not in any book accessible to 2nd years? That the Dark Lord himself guarded that knowledge from all but his inner circle? The Dark Lord. Not Voldemort, not a name spat with hatred. A title spoken by someone who has stood closer to that darkness than Harry ever did. Another reminder, this man is not just a bitter teacher. He is a survivor of a different war. Then maybe the book shouldn't have been in the library, Harry says, dry despite himself. Snape almost smiles. No, it shouldn't, nor should a possessed diary have been in the hands of a 1st year. His eyes flick to Harry's scar. Nor should you react to the word occlumency, as if I have threatened you with the Cruciatus. He hadn't realized the flinch made it to his face. Where did you hear that discipline named? Snape presses. Who spoke of mind shields to you? Your, a delicate pause, guardians. Sirius, Remus. Their names are a lifeline and a trap. Harry shakes his head. No, sir. I just read about that too. Snape leans back, robes whispering. Inside, he is running calculations. A boy raised by an ex-convict and a werewolf. A boy Dumbledore watches like a chess piece. A boy who kills Horcrux-like artifacts with surgical precision and lies with a straight spine but haunted eyes. Lily's eyes. He has sworn to protect this child for her sake. But what if protecting him means protecting others from him? Possession. Prophecy. Something worse. Something that feels like being in the same room as Tom Riddle again. The pattern has changed. The story is veering off the map. Snape makes a choice. "You will report here," he says calmly, "every Thursday evening. We will improve your discipline. Occlumency without the name. Observation disguised as instruction. And Potter, you will not speak of these sessions to the headmaster." Harry blinks. To Dumbledore? Why and? Because, Snape says, and there is steel under the silk, I intend to discover what is wrong with you before he does. In another timeline, this is where their fragile truce shatters. In this one, it is where a different, more dangerous alliance is born. What if the boy who lived is no longer the only one replaying the war in his head? This is that story. Year 3 setup. Hunting a godfather, saving a family. Summer presses down on Privet Drive like a lid. Heat, hedges, and the slow suffocation of normality. In another life, this is where Harry breaks under the weight of boredom and cruelty. In this one, the boy who lived sits very still at his tiny desk and calculates. He eats what he's given. He does the chores. He nods at Vernon's rants as if they're weather reports. Inside, he is somewhere else entirely. In a ruined courtyard, in a forest full of spiders, in a ministry corridor echoing with Bellatrix's laughter. The memories cut through the grief like a knife, but they also keep him cold. Detached, this is the last summer he will be truly trapped here, if he plays his cards right. What if he treats Privet Drive not as a prison, but a staging ground? What if every "yes, Uncle Vernon" is just camouflage for a war plan? When the news finally breaks, it feels almost scripted. Vernon's meaty hand tightens on the morning paper. "Escaped," he mutters, "from that freak prison of yours." "Who?" Sirius Black, Petunia whispers, eyes fixed on the moving photograph of a gaunt, snarling man. He was in the news years ago. In the first timeline, the name hits Harry as a threat. Now it lands like a heartbeat restarting. Sirius, the man who rode a hippogriff into the night. The man who fell through a veil in the ministry while Harry screamed his name. The man who died for him. He doesn't flinch, doesn't ask questions he already knows the answers to. Inside, a clock starts ticking. Azkaban, Dementors. No trial, no justice. How fast can he break the pattern this time? That night, by torchlight, in his smallest bedroom-turned-cell, Harry begins a different kind of homework. Careful, precise letters. Not the angry rants he wanted to send Dumbledore after the Department of Mysteries, but something subtler. Headmaster Dumbledore, I was wondering if Hogwarts keeps records of old trials for historical research. My parents fought in the war, and I'd like to understand what happened. He drafts, edits, redrafts. One letter asks about his parents' will, framed as a grieving child's curiosity. Another wonders, politely, whether all Death Eaters were tried the same way. A third, never sent yet, names Sirius Black and stops just before the accusation. Every line is bait. Every question is designed to brush against the hole where Sirius's trial should be. He remembers Fudge's puffed-up outrage, the way the minister hid behind procedure and panic. This time, Harry wants a paper trail leading straight to that absence. If Dumbledore ignores him, that's data. If the Ministry stonewalls, that's leverage. He also remembers a purple triple-decker bus screaming out of nowhere, Stan Shunpike's missing front tooth, the way the night bus delivered him straight into Fudge's office. Chaos, in hindsight, is a gift. Why not use it? So he rehearses, a stumble with his trunk at just the right corner, his wand accidentally drawn. A controlled burst of magic to summon the bus, not the wild, terrified flare of the first time. Diagon Alley will not be an escape this year. It will be a meeting ground, a path to the minister. A chance to ask, with wide 11-year-old eyes, how Azkaban really works. Later, when the house is silent, Harry kneels by his school trunk. Under his textbooks, under the invisibility cloak, there is a photograph from another life. His parents' wedding. James and Lily laughing, alive, untouched by war. And there, beside them, Sirius, young and reckless, throwing his head back in joy. Harry's fingers trace that laughing face. "Hold on," he whispers, voice rough. "I'm coming sooner this time." What if the man everyone fears as a mass murderer becomes his first real ally years ahead of schedule? The clock to Azkaban has started, and Harry is already moving. The Shrieking Shack, rewritten as a courtroom. November in his third year, the night everything changed again. Harry walks toward the Whomping Willow with a plan instead of a prayer. Not a terrified child dragged by events, but the boy who lived twice, replaying a scene he knows too well. In the original story, the Shrieking Shack was chaos, secrets, and a truth that vanished into ministry paperwork and Fudge's fear. What if this time it becomes something else entirely? Not a hiding place. A courtroom. He spent the whole year bending the path toward this point. In defense, he answers Lupin's questions with just enough insight to be impressive, not alarming. He lets slip that he's read obscure transformation theory. He asks, softly, why an unregistered animagus would be such a serious crime in wartime. Each choice is deliberate. Each answer nudges Remus toward trust. In the library, he discovers an old reference to animagus registry law and leaves the book open where Hermione will see it. He wonders aloud how a wizard might fake his own death. She bristles, intrigued and offended in equal measure, and starts reading. By Christmas, she's grilling him about the Marauder's map, about Sirius, about Peter, about what the Ministry missed. Harry never lies. He just doesn't tell her how he knows. At night, under his curtains, he practices. Silent, stunning spells, layered shield charms, a modified incarcerus that binds magic as well as limbs. And one spell that never existed in his first childhood, pieced together from war memories and old legal texts, Revelio Animagus. The shack smells of dust and old fear. Lupin's wand is shaking as he and Sirius corner Rom's rat. The revelation plays out almost word for word at first. Name, betrayal, James, Lily, Peter. In the original timeline, those words cut through the grief like a knife. This time, they land on someone already bleeding. Sirius is gaunt and wild-eyed. Remus is hollow with disbelief, and Peter is whimpering under the bed. But when the truth finally spills out, Harry does not reel. He steps forward, "I believe you," he says calmly, "both of you." But belief isn't enough, not anymore. Sirius blinks. Remus flinches. Even Hermione stares at him like he's suddenly older. "We keep him alive," Harry continues, "conscious. And we make sure no one can pretend this is a misunderstanding when we walk out of here." Before anyone can argue, he moves. Wand up. Voice steady. Revelio animagus. The magic is ugly and bright, a lattice of blue-gold lines slapping into place around scabbers. It's not just a revealment charm, it's a forced alignment, dragging a body to match its true registered form. The spell tugs on the trace of Peter's name in the old animagus rolls, on the legal bindings that should have kept him accountable to the ministry. That's why it matters. It creates a record. It makes denial perjury. The rat convulses, bones stretching, fur retracting, until Peter Pettigrew is kneeling on the rotten boards, glowing faintly with the residue of the spell. Every wand in the room registers it. Every enchanted object, Lupin's map, Hermione's borrowed legal text in her bag, quietly logs what just happened. "Witnesses," Harry says, breathing hard. "Magical and human. Try to wriggle out of that." Snape bursts in moments later, cloak billowing, already snarling accusations. In the first timeline, this is where everything slid back into the shadows. This is where Fudge won. Not this time. Harry doesn't lower his wand. He looks at Peter, at the man who left his parents dead on a cottage floor, and speaks with a war veteran's certainty. "We're not leaving this shack," he says, voice low and implacable, "until the whole world knows what you did." From shack to ministry, forcing a public reckoning. The words hang there, heavy as a killing curse. And then Harry does the most dangerous thing in the room. He shakes his head. "We're not leaving this shack," he repeats, "because we're taking him out. Now. Publicly." Sirius stares at him. Remus does too. They both hear the war in his voice. This is not an 11-year-old bluffing. This is the boy who lived remembering the night everything changed and refusing to let the ministry bury it again. "Fudge will have Dementors waiting at Azkaban," Harry says, eyes never leaving Peter. "He'll kiss you before anyone can say trial. We move him where he can't make you disappear." "Where?" Remus asks quietly. "Hogsmeade Gates," Harry answers. "Students, teachers, villagers. And if the timing's right, Muggle hikers on the road. Witnesses Fudge can't obliviate without starting an international incident. It's insane. It's brilliant. It's exactly the kind of calculated risk a man who's already fought this war once would take. What if the safest place isn't the shadows, but the one spot the ministry can't afford to scorch? They move fast. Remus binds Peter in layered ropes and anti-animagus chains. Sirius keeps his wand pressed to the traitor's throat with a promise in his eyes. Harry is already ahead, sprinting through the tunnel, sending his Patronus streaking like silver lightning toward the castle and the village both. At the gates, chaos blooms on cue. Students spill out from Hogsmeade. Teachers converge from the grounds. A pair of backpacking muggles stand frozen at the sight of a rat-faced man dragged through the snow by two wizards, who move like soldiers. The air crackles with fear and curiosity. Perfect. Harry plants himself in the center and raises his voice, not in a childish shout, but in the clear carrying cadence of someone who has addressed crowds at funerals and battlefields. "This man is Peter Pettigrew," he says. "He betrayed my parents to Voldemort. He murdered those muggles. Sirius Black is innocent. Auras arrive in a rush of green flame and snapping cloaks, wands already drawn. Fudge tumbles out behind them, hat askew, face pinched. He starts to bluster, but Harry cuts through the noise like a knife. "Minister," Harry calls, "you're just in time for proper procedure." The word lands like a spell. Procedure, not hysteria, not a child's story. Procedure. He points at Peter's wand, prior incantato. Now, in front of everyone. He doesn't ask, he directs. Then check the Animagus registry. You'll find Sirius Black listed. You will not find Peter Pettigrew. And you will take formal statements from Remus, Lupin, and Sirius under Veritaserum. Veritaserum is highly regulated. Fudge begins. In a case involving the boy who lived the last war and 13 dead muggles, Harry counters. You really want to explain to them, he gestures toward the pale hikers, why you refuse truth under oath? Pattern interrupt. Muggles, international law. Headlines, Fudge goes visibly paler. This is not the quiet, controllable Azkaban transfer he expected. This is a spectacle. This is that story, under the eyes of students, professors, villagers, and 2 thoroughly terrified non-magical witnesses. The auras perform prior incantato. The echoes of blasting curses shimmer above Peter's wand. Gasps ripple through the crowd. McGonagall's hand flies to her mouth. Snape's eyes narrow, calculating. Fudge tries to spin, to mutter about imposters and polyjuice, but every sentence frays against Harry's calm, relentless narrative. Harry lays out the betrayal, the Animagus form, the staged street, each detail delivered with a precision that makes it impossible to dismiss as childish fantasy. He even smiles once, thin and humorless. Of course, Minister, if you think the Daily Prophet would prefer a story about you ignoring evidence in front of muggles, that's your choice. Responsibility, consequences, words Fudge hates. In the end, he folds the only way he can. Sirius is taken into custody, but not to Azkaban. No Dementors. No island fortress. Instead, Fudge announces, too loudly, too brightly, that there will be a swift, transparent hearing at the Ministry. A public trial. Harry watches Sirius vanish into green flame, jaw clenched, mind already turning. The shack was the night everything changed. The gates are only the beginning. The real war will be fought in that courtroom, and this time, Harry plans to win it from the shadows. Sirius on trial. Harry's first open move against the system. The chamber is open and full of whispers. High above the polished floor, the Wizengamot rises in tiers of stone and purple, a semicircle of power that once condemned a man without ever letting him speak. Torches hiss, quills scratch, chains rattle on the single chair in the center. Harry stands just beyond it, small, 11. School robes slightly too big at the sleeves. The boy who lived, framed in the same cold light that once fell on his godfather. He remembers every face. In his first life, this room stayed a nightmare he never saw. This time, he walks into it on purpose. Fudge clears his throat, voice puffed up and self-important. We are here to consider the case of Sirius Black, who never had a trial, Harry says quietly. The words cut through the grief like a knife. Dozens of heads swivel down. A child has interrupted the minister. A child who is supposed to be grateful, overwhelmed, malleable. Harry lets his hands tremble on the rail of the witness stand, lets his eyes shine a little too wet. What if I hadn't seen him in that shack? He asks, voice thin but carrying. Would anyone here have bothered to ask whether he was guilty? Murmurs ripple. A few of the older witches shift, remembering the war, remembering James's laughing face, Lily's. Madam Bones leans forward. Mr. Potter, tell us, in your own words, what occurred. This is that story. Harry breathes, slow. He gives them the frightened child, the escape from the castle, the dog, the werewolf, the rat. His voice cracks in the right places. When he describes Sirius standing between him and a supposed murderer, his shoulders curl in. Then he slips the knife. So when the auras came, he says, did they check Sirius's wand? Prior incantato would have shown if he'd killed anyone, wouldn't it? A pause. Sharp. Uncomfortable. Amelia's monocle flashes. Dawlish? Did anyone perform prior incantato on Mr. Black's wand in 81? Dawlish swallows. No, Madam Bones. He confessed. Without veritaserum? Harry asks, head tilted. Without a pensieve? Without even asking why Peter Pettigrew's finger was the only part they found. The name lands like a curse. Remus steps up when called, bandages disappearing under his formal robes, wolfsbane still faint on his skin. His voice is steady, low, unmistakably sane. He confirms every detail. Peter, a secret keeper. Peter on the map. Peter's animagus form. The way Sirius went dead white when he realized the betrayal. Do you truly expect us to trust a werewolf? A thin wizard sneers. Remus doesn't flinch. You trusted me to teach your children, he says. You just didn't know it yet. The chamber doesn't quite know how to answer. Evidence follows. Relentless. The animagus registry, with 3 marauders listed and 1 conspicuously absent. A rat animagus demonstration from a junior auror, proving how easily Peter could have vanished. A dusty wand, recovered from a vault, shuddering under prior incantato as it spills images of a blown street. A green flash, a laughing high voice that makes several members go pale. And then Dumbledore, called not as savior, but as witness. Was Sirius Black ever formally processed through the Wizengamot? Amelia asks. Dumbledore's blue eyes flicker to Harry, to Remus, to the empty chair. No, he says at last, he was not. The admission hangs there, heavier than any spell. What if the greatest defender of justice simply didn't insist on it? The vote is swift. The gavel falls. By majority decision, Sirius Orion Black is exonerated of all charges. Peter Pettigrew, in absentia, is sentenced to life in Azkaban and the stripping of all honors, including the Order of Merlin, first class. Chains slither back from the empty chair. History rewrites itself in a single echoing crack of wood on stone. Harry walks out under a storm of voices, small shoulders straight, every step measured, 13 in his mind, 11 in his bones, and he has just moved the ministry like a chess piece. High above, Dumbledore watches him go, beard shadowed, expression unreadable. The boy who lived has stopped being a symbol. He has started being a player. And the next move will not be in a courtroom. A new home, Sirius, Remus, and the rebuilt Marauder household. The next move is a front door. Not to Privet Drive, Not to the echoing mausoleum of Grimold Place, a narrow brick terrace on a quiet Muggle street, where the lamplight is soft and the wards hum under the paint. Sirius stands on the step with a key in one hand and Harry's trunk in the other, heart pounding harder than it did the night everything changed. He bought it in a blur. Pot of gold, black stubbornness, and a goblin contract that makes the ministry clerk go pale. 3 bedrooms, a postage stamp garden, and protections laced so tightly that even Voldemort would feel them if he brushed past. Inside, it smells of fresh paint and dust and tea. Remus's books are everywhere already, stacked in tottering columns on the floor, double-shelved in the sitting room, one open on the counter with a spoon marking the page. There's a kettle whistling, a sofa with an actual blanket, a lamp that works when you tap it. Harry stands in the doorway and doesn't move. He has slept in tents, in hospital cots, in a dormitory waiting for war. He has watched both these men die. Now Sirius is kicking off his boots and swearing at a rug, and Remus is frowning at the kettle as if it has personally offended him, and the boy who lived is 11 again with a backpack that still smells of cupboard dust. "Come on, pup," Sirius says, trying for casual and missing by a mile. Home. The word hits Harry's ribs and lodges there. He walks to the kitchen table because his legs know how. He sits between them because they guide him there. When Sirius ruffles his hair, Harry's shoulders twitch before he can stop them. When Remus sets a mug in front of him and murmurs, "Drink up, cub," the endearment cuts through the grief like a knife. They see it. Of course they do. Sirius's hand curls into a fist on the table. He was in a cupboard, Mooney. A cupboard. And we let Dumbledore. The name is ash on his tongue. Remus's smile is thin and dangerous. "We trusted," he says quietly. "We will not make that choice again." His amber eyes find Harry's. "You are never going back there. Not while either of us is breathing. Do you understand?" Harry's throat works. He could tell them everything, couldn't he? What if he laid the war out on this cheap wooden table? The Horcruxes, Peter's escape, every grave in the Battle of Hogwarts. What if he warned them now, turned this modest house into a command center years ahead of schedule? Would it save them or twist them into something else? He opens his mouth, closes it. If he tells them, they stop being anchors and start being generals. If he tells them, this fragile, impossible normalcy shatters. He has already watched them die once. He is not ready to watch them become soldiers on his orders. Yeah, he manages. I understand. 3 mismatched mugs of tea steam on the low table. Harry has fallen asleep on the sofa, glasses askew, fingers still tangled in the blanket as if he expects it to be taken away. The television glows blue against the walls. A Quidditch magazine slides from Sirius's hand to the floor. In the doorway, voices murmur. "School supplies," Remus is saying. "We'll need to go to Diagon Alley. Properly. No more last-minute rescues from Dursley's. And guardianship papers," Sirius answers, low but fierce. "Ironclad, magical and muggle. No headmaster, no ministry decree, no one touches him." They watch Harry sleep, 2 men planning stationery and signatures. They do not see the way his fingers twitch, as if gripping a wand. They do not hear the silent inventory in his dreams. Diary, ring, locket, cup, diadem, snake, self. They think they are raising a boy. Harry stirs, eyes flickering beneath his lids, already calculating how to keep them alive. What happens when the rebuilt Marauder household discovers their child is a veteran planning their survival? This is that story. Training the future, childhood under the Marauder's eyes. Morning in Grimmauld Place does not begin with prophecy or war. It begins with Sirius Black turning the drawing room into a battlefield and calling it play. Feet apart, he tells the boy who lived, voice light, eyes sharp. You're a tree, Harry. Trees don't topple just because some Burke shoves them. He lunges without warning. Harry's wand is a toy, a charmed stick that spits harmless sparks, but his stance is perfect. Knees bent, weight balanced, wrist loose. He has done this in a graveyard with real curses and dead men watching. Now he lets himself wobble, just enough for Sirius to grin and correct him, hands firm on his shoulders. Better. Again. The command is wrapped in laughter. The precision is not. In the backyard, the war veteran in a child's body pretends to be thrilled for his first illicit broom ride. Sirius sneaks him past the back wards with the conspirators' wink, muttering about the ministry and their ridiculous regulations. The broom kicks up, wind tears at Harry's hair, and for a heartbeat he is 11 again, not the man who walked into the forest to die. Faster, Sirius shouts. Harry already knows how to dive through dragonfire. He still whoops and clings and lets Sirius teach him how to bank, how to trust the air. What if this is the last time Sirius is reckless without consequence? He memorizes the sound of his godfather's laughter like a spell. Evenings belong to Remus. The drawing room that held mock duels becomes a classroom. Books spread in disciplined arcs, ink bottles lined like soldiers. Theory first, Remus says, always. Power without understanding is just a brighter explosion. He traces wand motions in the air, slow and deliberate, while Harry mirrors him with infuriating ease. They dissect the shield charm, not as a trick, but as architecture. Why does it curve? Where does it draw from? When does defense become aggression? Remus asks, and waits, and listens to answers that are far too mature, then gently nudges them back toward childhood. Harry already knows every answer, every historical reference, the exact year the ministry codified unforgivable classifications. He feigns hesitation, fumbles dates, asks questions he doesn't need. The repetition is a ritual. Each careful swish, each measured incantation anchors him more tightly into this smaller hand, this higher voice, this second chance. The boundaries arrive earlier than the difficult questions. No, Remus says when Harry steers too close to intent, to blood, to binding. There are spells that mark you, even if no one sees the scar. No, Sirius snaps when an offhand comment brushes the edge of the killing curse. The air goes cold. You will never need that. Not you. Harry remembers casting it. He remembers meaning it. The memory cuts through the grief like a knife. He files their refusals away with grim patience. Not yet. Not in this house. And still, the house is not only a war room. There are arguments over curfew when Harry slips downstairs to read after midnight. Caught by Remus with a candle and a transfiguration text, there are dry, vicious jokes about Snape's hair that Sirius delivers over dinner, making Remus pinch the bridge of his nose while his mouth twitches. They bicker about chores. They negotiate about bedtime. They toast marshmallows in the kitchen over controlled bluebell flames. Underneath it all lies an unspoken treaty. Grimmauld Place is home, and it is a training ground. Every corridor is layered in wards, every bookshelf a potential weapon, every quiet conversation a lesson about power and choice. Harry is the only one who remembers the night everything changed, the only one who has already fought this war and died for it. How long can he pretend to be just their child before the future he escaped starts knocking on their door again? Enter Hermione, a second child of the war they don't know exists. The knock comes sooner than Harry expects. Not the night everything changed. A Tuesday in September, when the war is a ghost only he remembers, and primary school has already become a tedious exercise in pretending to be normal. He hears Petunia's clipped, suspicious dentists and knows the Grangers are here. He has been waiting for this. What if, this time, Hermione Granger doesn't have to fight the war alone in her own head until Hogwarts? What if the girl who will one day die in a ministry corridor in his arms never has to get that far? At King's Cross, the first meeting plays out on a knife edge. Sirius's all-leather jacket and too long hair, posture loose but eyes sharp, the ex-convict the papers still whisper about. Remus is beside him, shabby coat, new scars silvering his throat. The quiet professor who watched the boy who lived fall through a veil and come back from being dead. The Grangers see two men who look nothing like the respectable guardians they imagined. Hermione's mother's smile is polite, defensive. Her father's hand hovers, not quite offering a shake. There is a flicker of calculation in their eyes, danger assessment, parental instinct. Harry steps in before the silence can harden. "This is my godfather Sirius," he says, voice bright, rehearsed. "And this is Professor Lupin. He taught defense at Hogwarts. They're my family." The word lands between them. Family, not guardians. Not legal terms the ministry can twist. Just the truth. Remus meets Mrs. Granger's gaze and does what he does best. He explains. Calm, precise, every sentence a bridge. He talks about curriculum, safety, the reality of a war that is officially over but not truly dead. He does not mention Voldemort by name, but the shadow of him is there. Sirius, for once, lets him lead, only breaking in to describe the house wards with a dry, "No Dark Lord, disgraced headmaster, or nosy bureaucrat gets in without our say-so." Harry watches Hermione watching them. She is drinking in every word, eyes bright, questions already forming faster than her mouth can voice them. He remembers the girl who once trusted authority until it cut through the grief like a knife. He will not let Dumbledore, or the Ministry, or anyone else shape that mind unchecked. So he engineers contact. "You should come for Christmas," he tells Hermione on the train, casual on the surface, strategy humming underneath. Grimmauld Place has a library bigger than our common room. Sirius said we could invite friends. Remus could show you proper defensive theory, not just whatever the textbook says. Her hesitation isn't about desire. It's about duty. "Mum and Dad were expecting me home," she says softly. "They worry." "Then we invite them too," Harry answers. "They should see the world you're walking into, not just platform 9 3/4, the real thing." When the Grangers stepped through the flue that December, Sirius falls for Hermione instantly. Not romantically, primally. She barrels out of the fireplace, coughing soot, clutching a satchel so heavy with books it could double as a bludgeon, and launches straight into a barrage of questions about the Black family wards. Sirius sees Lily's fire in a different face and is lost. By nightfall, Hermione has a stack of conjured cushions, a promised tour of all the secret passages the marauders never told the professors about, and a quiet, conspiratorial lecture on the difference between rules that keep people safe and rules that keep people small. He buys her books the way other uncles buy sweets. He tells her stories of James and the map, and the choice to fight when the war first broke. Remus goes subtler. He notices the way Hermione's eyes darken when adults say, "Trust Dumbledore, he knows best." He remembers the order meetings, the secrets, the casualties. So he hands her texts that question, not just explain advanced arithmancy, magical lore, histories that mention goblins and werewolves as people, not monsters. He asks, gently, "What do you think?" and waits through her entire spiraling answer. He never says, "Don't trust the ministry." He asks, "Who benefits if the law stays this way?" He never says, "Dumbledore was wrong." He asks, "If an authority figure hides information from you, what does that tell you about their priorities?" By the second summer, the pattern is set. Hermione arrives with a trunk that goes straight to her room without discussion. Sirius argues mock trials with her over breakfast. Remus and Hermione spend evenings dissecting spell theory until the candles burn low. Harry watches the war he remembers, loosening its grip on her shoulders. One August night, after a long day of dueling drills in the warded basement, they collapse onto the patched, comfortable sofa in the sitting room. The house smells of parchment, tea, and something warm and indefinably safe. Hermione curls up at one end, feet tucked under a borrowed blanket, a book open but forgotten in her lap. Harry is beside her, head tipped back, eyes half closed, listening to Sirius arguing with Remus in the kitchen about whether animagus training should start at 12 or 13. She realizes, with a sharp, almost guilty clarity, that this messy, magical home feels more like hers than the quiet, orderly muggle house she grew up in. What if this is the family the war was supposed to steal from all of them? This is that story. And outside Grimmauld Place, forces that once shaped the boy who lived in secret are beginning to notice that their pieces are moving differently this time. Year 4's trap, outmaneuvering a tournament he knows too well. Year 4 arrives with fanfare and frost. For most students, the banners and talk of an ancient tournament are thrilling. For Harry, they cut through the grief like a knife. He steps off the train with Hermione at his shoulder and feels not wonder, but the echo of green light in a graveyard, Cedric's body hitting cold grass, Voldemort rising in a circle of Death Eaters who should already be dead. He knows the script. He has lived the war this tournament births. What if he could kill it before it ever breathes? In Grimmauld library, the plan had sounded almost simple. Don't let the goblet get him. No goblet, no portkey cup, no resurrection ritual, no graveyard. Sirius had paced between shelves, jaw tight, while Remus pulled down tomes on binding magic and Department of Mysteries case files. Hermione, quill flying, had catalogued every mention of magically enforced contracts the Ministry had ever recognized. Third-person limited or not, you can feel the pressure in that room. The boy who lived is treating a school event as a live minefield, and his guardians are helping him map every inch. Back at Hogwarts, he and Hermione move fast. The moment Dumbledore announces the Triwizard Tournament, they're in the library again, pretending to be awed fourth years while they hunt for the fine print. What invalidates a magical contract? Coercion, fraud. Prior claim, could they pre-register Harry as medically unfit? Could Madame Pomfrey certify a curse scar as disqualifying? Could an oath sworn on his magic, before witnesses, that he will not compete create a paradox the goblet can't resolve? Hermione whispers, if the goblet is treated as an arbiter, then lying to it must have consequences. What if we make the lie impossible? Harry thinks of graveyard mud and his own blood on Voldemort's wand. Then we give it the truth. I will not compete. They test smaller contracts first. School dueling pledges. Study group oaths. Remus coaches them through edge cases, forcing Harry to confront a hard reality. Ancient magic doesn't care about intention. It cares about structure, about who writes the rules. So Harry tries to change the board instead. He and Hermione start nudging older students. Subtle praise in the common room. Carefully seeded stories about glory, about ministry internships, about how international judges remember promising names. He steers conversations toward Angelina's Quidditch reflexes, toward the way Cedric can command a crowd, toward seventh years who, in another life, would die without ever knowing why. If the goblet wants champions, let it feast on willing, capable ones. Let it forget the small, scarred fourth year in the corner. The night of the selection, the great hall glows with blue goblet flame. Harry sits between Hermione and Ron, heartbeat steady only because he has rehearsed this moment 100 times. Durmstrang, Beauxbaton, Hogwarts, Cedric Diggory. The hall erupts. For a second, Harry almost believes they've done it. A charred scrap of parchment spits into Dumbledore's hand. Harry Potter, the outrage is instant, louder than last time. Because this Harry doesn't look shocked enough. He forces his eyes wide, his mouth open, plays the part of the blindsided child, while inside, something cold settles. Not, why me? Fine, then we do this my way. Because if the tournament is still here, if the graveyard is still waiting, what else in the story has refused to change? And who, exactly, is helping it stay that way? Competence on display, a different kind of champion. He walks into the champion's tent the way he once walked onto battlefields, already knowing where the dragons are. In the original timeline, the first task was chaos, a panicked scramble on a borrowed broom, the boy who lived surviving on nerve and luck. Not this time. This time, Harry has watched a Horntail kill men. He has flown through fiendfire. He has spent nights at Grimmauld Place with Sirius and Remus, drilling him on layered defenses until his wand arm shook. So he smiles, small and nervous, for the cameras. Inside, he is counting heartbeats. The whistle blows. Harry steps out, and the facade drops. A silent Protego Maxima blooms first, anchored to the earth with runes Hermione helped him sketch in the margins of his transfiguration notes. A secondary angled shield nests behind it, tuned, thank you Remus, to deflect heat rather than force. Then the distractions begin. Conjured ravens, shrieking and diving for the dragon's eyes. A timed bang behind its left flank, placed with the same precision he once used placing charges in the war. Only then does he summon the broom. Not a wild, looping daredevil run, but a controlled spiral, using the shields as cover and the dragon's leashed chain as geometry. He never comes within claw range. He never needs to. When he snatches the golden egg, it is almost anticlimactic. The judges are unsettled. Where was the reckless child? Where was the spectacle? Ludo Bagman calls it unorthodox. Karkaroff calls it suspicious. McGonagall just stares, remembering the night everything changed and wondering what exactly Hogwarts has made of this boy. Behind the scenes, the truth is worse and better. Hermione's letters arrive coded, every third word of every second line forming tactical notes. Sirius uses Christmas holidays to drag Harry through aerial combat drills until even the Weasley twins are impressed. Remus stands in the cleared drawing room at Grimmauld, wand raised, forcing Harry to cast non-verbal under pressure, with his back turned, narrating every mistake in that calm, inexorable voice that once cut through the grief like a knife. So when the second task looms, Harry refuses to be surprised. What if he simply refuses to be their pawn this time? He walks to the edge of the Black Lake days beforehand and calls down to the merpeople in their own tongue, words he learned in a different life from a different Dumbledore briefing. He negotiates, clarifies, no one dies today, no one is left too long. He already knows about gillyweed. He doesn't flaunt it. He discovers it through a carefully staged conversation with Neville, nudging Canon back on track, while quietly ensuring he has backup oxygen charms layered on every hostage. He spends the entire hour under the water, not racing but counting pulses, checking ropes, glaring down any Grindylow that comes too close to a sleeping first year. By the third task, he has stopped pretending this is a game. A maze is not a puzzle. A maze is a battlefield. Harry spends nights in the library mapping out likely curse placements based on what he knows of Barty Crouch Jr.'s style. He practices anti-curse counters until his wand hand cramps. He studies old oral manuals Sirius accidentally leaves on the kitchen table, tracing formations for close quarters work in confined spaces. And then he does something that never happened before. He tells Cedric. Quietly, in a shadowed corner of the library, he lays out a plan. Stay close. Share signals. Do not let the maze separate them. Cedric hesitates, pride warring with common sense, but Harry's eyes are too old, his voice too steady when he says, "I don't want anyone dead tonight." In the end, Cedric nods. They move through the hedges as a unit, back to back, shields overlapping, calling out threats in clipped professional bursts. Harry disarms curses before they fully form. Cedric handles the creatures. Hufflepuff patience turned into ruthless efficiency. It works. Too well. Because competence cannot fix a rigged story. Their hands close on the cup together. The port key yanks. Harry feels the hook in his navel and understands, with a cold, clinical clarity he did not have last time, exactly where they are going. The graveyard is still waiting, but this is not the same boy who watched Cedric die. This is that story. The story where foreknowledge meets inevitability, where preparation slams headlong into prophecy. And as the world spins away from the maze, one question hammers through Harry's mind. If the war insists on replaying itself, what choice will he make when he finally stands before Voldemort again? The graveyard reborn, killing a different Voldemort. He hits the graveyard already moving. No frozen horror, no blank shock. The night everything changed has been replayed in his nightmares for years, dissected and mapped, and turned into a battle plan. The instant his feet slam into the cold earth of Little Hangleton, Harry is not the confused fourth year. He is the man who ended a war, shoved back into the body of the boy who lived. Cedric, down. He tackles Cedric before the echo of the port key fades, rolling behind the nearest headstone. Not confusion, cover. the angel-topped monument to Thomas Riddle. He knows that angle, that line of fire. A red jet of light snaps over their heads and scorches marble. Wormtail's panicked curse, right on schedule. Harry's already aimed. Expelliarmus, expulso. The first strips Wormtail's wand from his hand. The second slams into the steaming cauldron, not the rat. The metal ruptures with a shriek, potions spraying in an arc of boiling green. Bone of the father, flesh of the servant, blood of the enemy. He's memorized the litany, and he knows where to break it. The bone. He whips his wand. Accio Riddlebone. The earth at the base of the grave shudders. A yellowed shard tears free of the soil, veering toward him. Wormtail screams, diving, fingers outstretched. Harry doesn't let him make the catch. Confringo. The air detonates around the bone. Shards of ancient magic-infused calcium explode through the half-collapsed cauldron, punching holes in the ritual circle. The potion howls, an animal sound, collapsing in on itself and then surging outward in a thick, viscous wave that splashes over the bundle of Voldemort's twisted, infant-like body. The scream that answers cuts through the grief like a knife. Cedric is shaking beside him. Potter what? Shields up now. Protetto duplex. Harry's barrier flares, layered the variant Remus drilled into him for giants and cursed fire, not school duels. Cedric stares for half a heartbeat, then copies him with a much thinner shell. Around them, masked figures apparate in with soft cracks. The ring of Death Eaters closes, but their choreography is broken. The Dark Lord's rebirth is not a smooth ascension, it's a magical accident in progress. From the cauldron, something drags itself upright. Voldemort is wrong, taller than the infant thing should allow, but his skin is raw and patchy. One arm withered, the other overgrown. Fingers too long. His eyes burn red, then flicker, one iris a dull, human brown for a heartbeat before it snaps back. He looks at Harry and stops. "Your fear," Voldemort hisses, voice rasping as if through broken glass. "It tastes different." Harry holds his gaze. Controlled hatred. Cold. "You're missing pieces," he says softly. "Horcruxes will do that." The word lands like a curse. Around the circle, several Death Eaters flinch. Voldemort's pupils narrow, not in omniscient fury, but in calculation. There is a gap here, a hole in his knowledge that should not exist. How does a fourth year know the secret of his survival, the map of his soul? "What if you're not as untouchable as you think?" Harry asks. "What if this is the best you ever get?" Voldemort raises his wand. Movement jerky. "Kill the spare," he snarls, but the old script is offbeat, the timing ruined. Harry moves first. Serpens Ictus, experimental magic, half legal, the snake strike hex Sirius made him promise never to use on living targets. A whip of spectral fangs lashes around Voldemort's arm, sinking into the overgrown limb. Venomous light floods his nerves. The Dark Lord staggers, wand arm spasming. Stupefy. Stupefy. Expelliarmus. Harry chains the spells, not at Voldemort, but at the nearest three masks. Wands fly, bodies crumple, gaps open in the circle. Cedric, finally catching up, sends a blazing Incarcerus that tangles another pair. "Ministry will never believe this," Cedric gasps. "They won't have to," Harry snaps. "They'll see it." He jerks his chin at the exposed faces, the torn masks, the half-formed Dark Lord screaming in a ruined ritual. The portkey cup is still humming where it fell. On 3, Harry says, "Leave him broken. Make them watch him crawl back." Voldemort's voice rips across the graves. Harry Potter, the boy who lived, doesn't answer. He grabs Cedric's arm. They lunge. Graveyard air becomes spinning color. And this time, Harry leaves Little Hangleton with Cedric alive, Voldemort maimed, and a circle of unmasked Death Eaters that no Ministry official in the world can pretend are dead myths anymore. The war has been dragged into the open years too early. This is that story. Year 5, without denial, a Ministry cornered too soon, a land not in a quiet hospital wing, but in a storm. Cedric is screaming before the portkey finishes spitting them out. Ash on his robes, grave dirt on his shoes. The Triwizard Cup clatters across the grass. The stands erupt. Dumbledore is already moving, blue robes a streak against the night, because this is not the script he remembers. Death Eaters, Harry rasps, voice wrecked. Graveyard, Little Hangleton, Voldemort. The name cuts through the grief like a knife. It freezes the pitch. It freezes Cornelius Fudge halfway down the stairs of the minister's box. In canon, Fudge had room to lie. Here, he has witnesses. Cedric's story tumbles out in jagged bursts. The dark mark, the chanting, the moment Voldemort rose, thin and terrible, before Harry's spell tore through the ritual. Auras apparate to the graveyard within minutes, riding the coordinates Dumbledore rips from Harry's mind with brutal efficiency and a murmured apology. They do not arrive to cold stone and whispers. They arrive to bodies. Lucius Malfoy stunned and masked, Bellatrix howling in invisible bonds, others groaning on blood-slick grass, a cauldron cracked, a homunculus of flesh cooling by its side, a wand that answers to Tom Riddle when Amelia Bones demands its allegiance. What if the Ministry had been forced to face the war when Voldemort was still limping? What if denial died in a Muggle graveyard instead of a Ministry atrium? Fudge tries. He blusters about Polyjuice, about imposters, about elaborate hoaxes. But Cedric is alive, shaking, and very much the Hogwarts champion of the Minister's own tournament. There are Veritaserum-backed memories, Priori Incantatim on half a dozen wands, and Harry who survived the killing curse twice, who stands under the glare of 100 cameras and quietly repeats, "He's back. You have to act now." The boy who lived becomes the boy the public believes. Panic follows. Emergency decrees slam through the Wesengamot. Curfews in vulnerable villages. Azkaban on war footing. Auras drag rusted protocols from the last conflict and discover they are chasing a network Harry already knows by heart. Behind closed doors, Dumbledore is a study in contradictions, relief that Fudge cannot smear him as a mad old man. Terror at the way Harry speaks about Horcruxes, about giants and werewolves and giants again, as if he has read a script no one else can see. "How do you know these things?" he asks once, very softly. Harry meets his gaze without flinching, because if we don't move fast, people die the same way every time. It is the kind of answer that would have made sense from Alastor Moody, not from a 14-year-old. Harry leverages that dissonance. He gives the prophet interviews with Remus at his side, calmly dismantling the Dementor system. asking why creatures that once served Voldemort are still the Ministry's favored jailers. He stands in front of the full Wizengamot and says, "If you want me to keep fighting your war, you will stop treating werewolves as expendable." Sirius, newly free and very loud, backs him with black gold and black outrage. Remus backs him with quiet, relentless facts. Auror training manuals are dragged into the present under Harry's unnerving critiques of their dueling formations. "They'll get you killed," he tells a room of veterans. "They got you killed before." Most assume he means the last war. Dumbledore hears something else. And so the Order of the Phoenix is reborn, but not in secret basements and whispered passwords. It is threaded through the Department of Magical Law Enforcement, through St. Mungo's, through Hogwarts governors' meetings, an unofficial task force with an official budget and an unofficial strategist who still has to turn in his transfiguration homework. Sirius and Remus sit at its heart, flanking Harry at a kitchen table in Grimmauld Place that has become a war room years too early. Maps, names, timelines. Harry is drawing the future from memory. The question no one has asked yet is simple. What happens when the future starts refusing to match? The Department of Mysteries, avoided or reforged. The question hangs over the kitchen table like a curse. What happens when the future starts refusing to match? What happens when the first fixed point Harry Potter remembers is the one he cannot bear to live through again? The Department of Mysteries. Even thinking the name makes his stomach twist. In his mind, the Hall of Prophecy is not shelves and dust. It is Sirius falling in slow motion, the veil rippling, his own throat tearing around a scream that never reached his godfather in time. That memory had once cut through the grief like a knife. Now it burns like a brand. This is the night everything changed in the first war he lived. This is the night he refuses to repeat. So he makes a choice. He does not wait for fifth year. He does not wait for dreams. He corners Sirius and Remus in the cleaned, sunlit drawing room of Grimmauld Place, the boy who lived standing ramrod straight with an adult's resolve in an 11-year-old's spine. "Promise me something," Harry says. No preamble, no softening. If the Ministry ever calls, if there's ever a hint of the Department of Mysteries, you do not rush, you do not go in without a plan and backup. Ever. Sirius tries for a joke. "Planning in my house? What if James hears about this from beyond the veil?" The word lands wrong. Harry flinches. The humor dies. Remus sees it. "Harry, what are you really afraid of?" He cannot say, "You die there." You both do in different ways. He cannot admit that he has watched Remus's face go grey with another loss, that he has lived through a world where the veil ate his family. So he reaches for the truth he can share. "Voldemort uses traps," Harry says quietly. "He uses the Ministry. He uses what we care about. I need you to swear you won't charge in because you think I'm in danger. Not without checking. Not without Dumbledore and Kingsley and a way out." It is an odd request from a child. It is also a battlefield order. Sirius and Remus both recognize the cadence. They swear. That oath reshapes everything. When the visions begin, whispers at the edge of sleep, corridors and doors and a snake's eye view of pain, Harry does not treat them as prophecy. He treats them as enemy action. Occlumency is not a desperate late fifth-year patch. It becomes a second language. Snape, bound by Dumbledore and grudging curiosity about this unsettlingly disciplined first year, drills him. Remus reinforces the shields with breathing patterns and memory anchors built from laughter at the kitchen table, not screams in the Hall of Prophecy. Harry learns to feel the difference between his own thoughts and the cold, oily slide of Voldemort's. The next time the image comes, Sirius writhing under a curse in the Department of Mysteries, Harry does not panic. He calls a war council. Pattern interrupt. The Hall of Prophecy does not begin with a handful of terrified teenagers. It begins with dossiers, maps of the Ministry, rotas of Auror shifts, Hermione's notes on anti-veil theory dug out of obscure unspeakable journals, Dumbledore's quiet, intent gaze as Harry lays out, with chilling specificity, how Voldemort will try to draw him to the department by weaponizing his love. "Then we make it our battlefield," Dumbledore says at last. And they do. When the trap is finally sprung, it snaps on the wrong necks. The Order does not arrive late and scattered. They arrive in coordinated waves. Kingsley and Tonks secure the lifts. Remus and Moody anchor anti-apparition and anti-veil wards that turn the arch into inert stone for the duration of the fight. Sirius does not sprint ahead bellowing challenges. He moves in a tight formation with Harry and Hermione, shields layered, curses precise. The Hall of Prophecy becomes a Death Eater graveyard. Lucius falls stunned and bound beneath a rain of coordinated spells. Bellatrix's laughter chokes off when her killing curse rebounds from a warded arch that will not take Sirius this time. At the end, Dumbledore plucks the prophecy from its shelf with steady fingers. Intact, controlled, delivered into his hands, not shattered at Harry's feet. Sirius is breathing. Remus is standing. No one has fallen through the veil. Harry feels the timeline shudder. Every major death he averts pushes them further from the war he remembers, further into uncharted territory, where even his hard-won memories cannot fully guide him. What if the real danger isn't reliving the past, but walking blind into a future he never saw? This is that story. Horcrux Hunt 2.0, starting years earlier, striking much harder. The candles in Grimmauld war room burn low, dripping wax onto maps and parchments. The air tastes of dust and ink and the future. Harry has been avoiding this moment since the night everything changed. He doesn't pace. He stands, shoulders square, jaw tight, eyes too old for his face. Sirius slouches in a chair, boots on the table. Remus leans against a bookcase, arms folded. Hermione has 3 quills behind her ear, and a stack of notes she doesn't yet know are useless. "What if I told you," Harry says, voice rough, "that Voldemort can't be killed? Not yet." That gets their attention. Completely. Remus straightens. Sirius's boots hit the floor. Hermione's quill snaps between her fingers. Harry swallows. He tore his soul apart. He hid the pieces. Until we find and destroy them all, he'll come back, again and again. The word hangs there. Horcrux. It cuts through the grief like a knife. He explains the diary first, because that one is safe. A memory that tried to kill Ginny Weasley in a future that hasn't happened. Then the ring in a ruined gaunt shack. The locket that once choked a house elf in this very house. A cup buried in the bones of Bellatrix's vault. A diadem lost in Hogwarts stone. Nagini. 7 anchors for a man who should be dead. Hermione goes very still. Horror flickers across her face, chased almost immediately by something sharper. Fascination. Strategy. "You're sure?" she asks, Not theory, not rumor. You've seen them? I've destroyed some, Harry answers. I've watched others destroyed. I know what they feel like, what they do to people. Her eyes shine, not with excitement, but with the terrible relief of finally having terms for the war they're already fighting. Within an hour, she has devoured every mention of soul magic in Sirius's cleaned-out library, cross-referencing obscure tomes with Harry's precise descriptions, the oily pull of the diary, the cracked curse on the ring, the suffocating malice of the locket. Sirius and Remus exchange a look over her bent head. This is that story, not of the boy who lived stumbling into Horcruxes by accident, but of a household choosing to hunt them on purpose. Sirius claims the locket immediately. It's a black heirloom. My house, my problem. His grin is sharp. And my burglary. The one who can slip through old pure-blood wards, turn family arrogance against them, and walk out of Grimald's cursed cabinets with a heavy, hateful locket in his pocket before Kreacher can whisper Master Regulus. Remus takes the quieter path. He goes to Dumbledore not as a supplicant, but as a colleague with questions about cursed artifacts and theoretical soul-splitting. He visits a retired unspeakable who owes James Potter a favor and asks, very calmly, how one might dismantle a vessel that does not wish to die. Harry does not mention the last Horcrux, the one lodged behind his scar. How do you tell your family that killing the enemy means killing their child? He watches Sirius plan security for a future he might not see. He listens to Remus talk about what they'll do after the war. Each word is a weight he carries alone. The montage begins early. The diary is already ash in another timeline, its echo neutralized in this one before it can ever reach Hogwarts. The ring is taken with fewer casualties. Dumbledore's hand never blackens because Remus insists on unspeakable protocols and containment circles. The locket vanishes from Grimald's cabinet years before the Order would ever meet there. Sirius and Kreacher united in finishing what Regulus began. Hermione pins notes on a board: cup, diadem, Nagini, arrows, timelines, Hogwarts marked as both battlefield and vault. Each success tightens the noose around Voldemort's fractured soul. But if the anchors fall early, how will the Dark Lord react when he realizes the war is being fought years ahead of schedule, becoming Dumbledore or Voldemort? The moral tightrope. Each success tightens the noose around Voldemort's fractured soul. But as the anchors fall, something else tightens too: Harry's grip. By Christmas of second year, the boy who lived has become very good at not answering questions. Not lying, not exactly. Just trimming the truth until it fits the shape he needs. When Amelia Bones asks, in a quiet office at the Ministry, how he knew about the Lestrange Vault, he talks about strange dreams and old magic, and lets her assume prophecy. He does not mention the night everything changed, the war, or Bellatrix dying at his feet years from now. Dumbledore's eyes search his face. Harry holds the gaze, steady, polite, unreadable. He has learned from the best. At Grimald, it's subtler. Sirius and Remus think they're seeing a cautious, overtrained child. They don't see the calculations layered under every visit to Diagon Alley, every question about Ministry procedure, every stray comment about the Department of Mysteries. When Remus presses, asking if there's more to Quirrell than a possessed professor, Harry smiles and says, "I handled it, didn't I?" He changes the subject to Wolfsbane. What if the most dangerous habit he brings back from the war isn't a spell, but the ease of deciding what other people don't need to know? Hermione notices first. Of course she does. It starts as a pattern on the board in their shared study. Missions where she was present but uninformed. The diary in the chamber. The cup in the Lestrange vault. The cursed ring he just happened to leave in Sirius's safe instead of her lab. Lines of red string, and a gap where her consent should have been. She corners him after a raid on a minor Horcrux cache goes sideways. Ministry hit wizards nearly walking into a trap he'd anticipated, but not fully explained. "Since when?" she says, voice shaking. "Do you get to make decisions about my life without asking me? Since when do you take risks on my behalf and call it protection?" Harry fires back that he's seen her dead, that he's seen all of them dead, that if he tells them everything, they'll try to stop him, or worse, follow him into the same graves. Hermione's answer cuts through the grief like a knife. "Do you hear yourself? That's Dumbledore. That's exactly what he did to you." The words land harder than any curse, because he has heard this speech before in another timeline from another Hermione, standing in a tent in the dead of winter, asking why no one ever told them the full plan. He looks at her now and realizes he has become the one standing in the shadows of the chessboard. And beyond Dumbledore, a darker mirror waits. Voldemort, who treated people as tools and obstacles, who believed his knowledge alone justified every sacrifice. Is Harry really so different if he withholds the truth and assumes he knows best which lives can be risked? The breaking point comes in an abandoned mill outside Birmingham. A Horcrux decoy, a trap woven into the floorboards. Harry reads the pattern of runes, thinks he understands it, and orders a fast breach with a small team. No need to involve the adults. No need to worry Sirius. The explosion is controlled, mostly. The curse rebounds, mostly. But Tonks still hits the far wall with a crack that silences the room. Her leg is ruined, her career maybe. The Auras who arrive later call it a success. The Horcrux network is one node weaker. Harry can't hear them over the ringing in his ears. He had seen the risk. He had decided it was acceptable. For her, back at Grimmauld, Sirius rages. Remus goes very quiet, and Hermione doesn't say "I told you so." She just sits across from Harry at the kitchen table until he finally whispers the thing he's been afraid to name. "I'm turning into him." "Which him?" she asks. "You have more than one ghost." He thinks of Dumbledore's calm calculations, of Voldemort's contempt, of his own hands, steady over maps where everyone else is a piece. So he makes a new promise, one that terrifies him more than any duel. Not just to save them, to tell them, to let Sirius choose when to walk into danger, to let Remus weigh the cost, to let Hermione look at the board and say no. It means surrendering control he's clung to since the war. It means accepting that foreknowledge is not ownership. But can a boy who has already watched the world burn really step back from the board, when the next move Voldemort makes might punish every weakness Harry dares to show? Institutional upheaval, Hogwarts and the Ministry. Rewired. He doesn't. Not really. Harry eases his grip on the board, but the war does not wait for him to find balance. The first shockwave hits Hogwarts. By the time open war is acknowledged, by the time even the Ministry can't pretend disappearances are accidents, the castle is no longer a picturesque school with a dangerous secret in the third-floor corridor. It is a fortress under renovation, New wards crawl over the stone like veins of blue fire. Defensive lattices keyed not just to staff, but to students Harry trusts, hum beneath the ancient protections the founders left behind. Classrooms change. Charms essays give way to shield drills. Transfiguration essays are interrupted by McGonagall snapping, wands out, and forcing fourth years to hold animagus-level focus under simulated curse fire. The Dueling Club is not Lockhart's vanity project. It is a sanctioned, brutal curriculum module, with Sirius and Remus stalking the edges of the Great Hall, correcting stances with the same quiet intensity they once used in the Order. What if Hogwarts had trained its children for the world they were actually walking into? This is that story. Dumbledore feels the shift first. He watches the boy who lived move through his school with the wary patience of a veteran, sees Hermione build study groups that look suspiciously like cells, and understands that his old habit of hoarding information has already failed once. The night everything changed for him is not a prophecy or a duel. It is McGonagall walking into his office, placing a stack of revised safety protocols on his desk, and saying very calmly, "We share power, or we lose this school." He agrees. A formal war council forms. Dumbledore, McGonagall, Flitwick, Pomfrey, with Sirius and Remus as external liaisons. McGonagall becomes the operational heart of Hogwarts, turning strategy into timetables, fear into drills. Curfews are enforced not by threats, but by transparent explanations of risk. Students are briefed on Death Eater tactics. Patronus training is offered to any third year who can manage the spell. The castle stops pretending children are safe because adults say so. Auror training is ripped open and rewritten. Shacklebolt and Tonks drag the program into the war they're actually fighting. Building scenarios around Death Eater ambushes Harry has already lived through once. Werewolf legislation softens under sustained pressure. Remus's file, Hermione's research, and Harry's testimony cut through the grief like a knife in committee after committee until Wolfsbane access and employment protections are no longer theoretical. Then comes Azkaban. After a near disaster, Dementors slipping their leash during a transport, nearly kissing an innocent clerk, the calculation changes. What if the creatures that guard your prison are more loyal to Voldemort than to the Ministry? The question is no longer academic. Dementors are withdrawn, replaced with layered wards and human oversight. The old fortress turned into something marginally less monstrous. In the middle of this, Hermione becomes a quiet legislative terror. She uses crisis as leverage, stapling house elf protections and muggle-born anti-discrimination clauses to emergency security bills no one dares vote down. House elf contracts are audited. Muggle-born families receive automatic warding and liaison support. Every moral victory also hardens their side of the war. By the time Voldemort moves in the open, Hogwarts is unrecognizable. Less naive, more battle-ready. And beneath every structural change, whether anyone names it or not, is the influence of the boy who once only wanted to play Quidditch and pass his exams, and who now walks his second childhood determined that this time fewer names end up dead on the memorial wall. The alternate final war, coordinated, calculated, and costly. By the time the war breaks fully into the open, Hogwarts is a blade instead of a shield. What if the castle that once stumbled into battle is now the place that chooses it? Voldemort comes back wrong. The early Horcrux losses, the diary and the ring ripped from his web years ahead of schedule, have left holes in him that never quite close. The botched rebirth in that graveyard, interrupted by Sirius's strike team, sabotaged by Hermione's potions, gives him a body, but not the power he expected. His magic is volatile. His temper is worse. His forces are smaller. His paranoia sharper. He is the Dark Lord who knows he is losing time. Sirius feels it in every briefing. War has stripped the jokes down to bone. He commands rapid response strike teams now, ex-Order and 7th year veterans moving through enchanted maps Hermione updates in real time. A raid on a Muggle village, they're there before the first house is fully aflame. A Death Eater ambush on a Ministry convoy. They hit the flank, not the front, because Harry has already predicted the pattern. Remus lives in the shadows between those strikes. He coordinates intelligence, stringing together werewolf packs, goblin contacts, and disillusioned ministry clerks into a net that catches whispers before they become massacres. The man who once flinched at his own reflection now sits at the center of a web of oaths and hard-won trust, sending coded Patronus messages that cut through the grief like a knife. And Hermione? Hermione runs the war you don't see. Logistics. Research supply lines threaded through Hogsmeade cellars and abandoned black properties that Sirius signs over without blinking. She drafts evacuation protocols for every major magical settlement. She turns Wolfsbane from a rare luxury into a weaponized standard, ensuring Remus's allies can fight beside them, not be locked away. Harry is the point of the spear. The boy who lived is no longer just a legend. He is a field commander whose every order is weighted with memories of the night everything changed. He walks the corridors of Hogwarts, counting choke points, measuring blast radii, remembering where children once died, and refusing to let that story repeat. So when the Battle of Hogwarts comes, it isn't a panicked last stand. It is an invitation. Wards hum in layered shells, tuned over years with Flitwick's precision and Hermione's ruthless creativity. Evacuation routes snake through secret passages, each watched by DA veterans with color-coded signal flares. Red, hold. Blue, fall back. White, get the first years out, now. McGonagall stands at the front doors in battle robes, dueling Death Eaters with terrifying surgical efficiency, transfiguring stone into shackles mid-curse. Neville, carrying the quiet weight of every training session Harry forced on him, doesn't charge alone. He moves with a squad, shield charms overlapping. As they corner Nagini in the greenhouses, transformed into a killing ground of enchanted vines and explosive seedlings. When he swings the sword this time, it's under cover fire, not blind luck. Snape's fate is different too. His earlier alliance with Harry and Remus has burned away some of the worst poison. He fights openly on their side. His mastery of the dark arts turned outward, dismantling the very curses he once admired. The Shrieking Shack is not his tomb, it's a forward aid station he helps ward. By the time Voldemort forces his way into the grounds, he is walking into a fortress designed by children he dismissed as weak. Every corridor channels him. Every staircase is a choice Harry has already mapped. This is that story. Voldemort is cornered in the Great Hall, lit not by fear, but by prepared defiance. And when Harry steps forward to meet him, he is not a sacrificial lamb led to slaughter. He is an equal, armed with 2 lifetimes of war, and this time he has no intention of dying, facing the Hallows and the Horcrux within. But there is a secret Harry has not yet put on the table. The one thing even 2 lifetimes of war never made easier to say. The great hall hums with wards and whispers, but the confession happens in a smaller room, behind stone and silence. Sirius, Remus, Hermione, the boy who lived sitting on the edge of a transfigured hospital bed that still smells faintly of dittany and smoke. His hands shake, not from fear of Voldemort, from fear of them. "I'm one of them," Harry says. "One of the Horcruxes." The words cut through the grief like a knife. For a heartbeat, no one moves. Sirius goes white in a way Azkaban never managed. Remus's breath leaves him in a sound that is almost a snarl. Hermione's chair scrapes back, her eyes huge, not in disbelief. She's too smart for that, but in horror that the pattern she missed was Harry himself. Sirius is across the room in a step. "No, absolutely not. We destroy Horcruxes. We do not destroy you." His voice is wild, cracking on the last word, as if the Ministry has walked in to drag Harry to a cell. Remus's hands are steadier, but only just. "How long have you known?" The question is soft, lethal, not at Harry, at himself, at Dumbledore, at a war that marked a child as dead the night everything changed and never told him. Hermione is already reaching for parchment, fury sharpening her. Then we find another method. We have precedent. You've died once, Harry. The fragment survived that. Why? What if that's the key? Because the Hallows, because the Elder Wand bending, the stone turning, the cloak sheltering him in the forest. Because once he was master of death, and he walked back. Dumbledore appears in the doorway as if summoned by the thought, blue eyes ancient and unbearably gentle. The path remains the same, Dumbledore says. Tom bound his soul to yours. He cannot be unmade while that shard endures. You must meet him unarmed and let him strike. It is the only way. Harry's laugh is short, vicious. You want me to walk into the forest again and let him kill me while you call it necessary? No, we are not repeating your story. Remus steps between them, for once not the conciliator. We have a weakened soul, a known anchor, and a wizard who has already crossed the boundary and returned. What if we treat this as soul surgery, not execution? Hermione's quill is flying. A ritual. We use the cloak to isolate Harry's soul, the stone to call and pin the fragment, the Elder Wand to sever it. You didn't just survive death. Harry, you governed it. That changes the rules. Dumbledore hesitates. In another life, he would have insisted. In this one, he is staring at Sirius's bared teeth and Remus's cold calculation and Hermione's relentless logic, and he understands the tide has changed. The ritual is brutal. Harry stands inside a triple circle of runes, cloak drawn tight, stone pressed to his chest, Elder Wand leveled at his own scar. Voldemort's magic claws at the wards above, sensing something, unable to reach. Voices rise in the circle. James, Lily, others Harry lost once already, as the Horcrux is dragged screaming from him and pinned, a writhing shadow, before Remus's final cutting curse unravels it. For a second, Harry is nowhere. No hall, no war, no weight. Just the cold, clean awareness that he has stepped over that line again and chosen, again, to come back. When he walks into the Great Hall to face Voldemort, he is not a vessel or a sacrifice. He is a boy who has already died, already mastered death, and still chosen life. Voldemort raises his wand, sensing something wrong, something missing. Harry smiles. Because if the prophecy no longer binds him as a Horcrux, then what exactly is Voldemort about to kill? The last duel, twice lived. Killing Voldemort for good, the Great Hall holds its breath. Voldemort's presence presses against the wards and stone, a cold, oily weight. He stands alone in the center of the shattered house tables, robes whispering over broken wood, snake-like face twisted in contempt, power coils around him, bright and lethal. Harry does not stand alone. Behind him, professors line the dais, wands raised. The Order flanks the walls. Students, his students this time prepared, form disciplined ranks. House colors bleed together into one stubborn, defiant line. This is not the night everything changed by accident. This is the night they chose. Voldemort sneers. You would hide behind children? Harry's answer is quiet, but it carries. I stand with them. That's the difference. The first curse is not green. It's a white-hot lance of Sectum Sempra, the same spell Snape once hurled in a different timeline. Harry is already moving. Shield. Sidestep. His wand snaps in a tight arc, sending a silent disruptor hex straight through Voldemort's hastily raised barrier, aimed at the shoulder he knows is weaker from that botched resurrection brew. Because what if you walked into your final duel already knowing your enemy's favorite moves? Harry has lived this war twice. He's catalogued every flourish, every indulgent pause, every moment Voldemort liked to monologue when he should have killed. This is that story. Cruciatus. The angle is textbook. Harry's counter-curse meets it mid-air, shearing the spell apart so the backlash scorches the flagstones instead of human flesh. Voldemort's eyes narrow. That wasn't luck. That was anticipation. He tries the bone-shattering hex Harry watched break Moody's leg in the First War. Harry is already behind a column, already redirecting the stone shrapnel with a wandless shove Remus drilled into him. At 14, well, the first 14. A reductor, tight and surgical, blasts the remnants of the nearest Horcrux anchor hidden in the hall's warding lattice, a contingency Voldemort never even considered anyone could see. The Elder Wand sings in Harry's grip, not a secret, not a twist. They both know where its loyalty lies. Voldemort snarls as his own U-wand judders, his curses flying slightly wide, precision eroding. But the wand is only one tool among many, and Harry refuses to hang the fate of everyone he loves on a single brittle legend. Impossible, Voldemort hisses, voice cracking as another carefully layered shield buckles under a coordinated volley from McGonagall, Kingsley, and Hermione. You are a child. Am I? Harry steps through the dust and spell smoke, eyes steady. How many times have you tried to kill me now? How many bodies did you burn getting here? There's a flicker. Not remorse. Tom Riddle is long dead, but calculation gone wrong. He thinks of the diary destroyed years too early, the ring taken from his grandfather's shack without fanfare, the locket stolen before Umbridge ever touched it, the cup vanished from Gringotts with no dragon, no chaos, only clean precision. He thinks of Nagini, already dead on the floor of the forest, neck broken in a trap baited with Harry's own blood. Every step he took toward immortality, dismantled by a boy who refused the script. Pattern interrupt. Voldemort does something he never does. He hesitates. In that breath, Harry sees the whole war compressed. The cupboard, Sirius falling, Remus dead in the rubble, The ministry in flames, the boy who lived walking into the forest to die. He has killed before. He knows exactly what Avada Kedavra means, what it steals, what it ends. Choice. That's what Remus taught him. That's what Sirius bled for. Not prophecy, not inevitability. Harry raises the Elder Wand, not as a relic, but as an instrument of mercy for everyone who will never have to fear this man again. Tom Riddle, he says, voice steady. This stops with me. No rebound, no fluke. Voldemort's body hits the stone with a dull human finality, and for the first time in 2 lifetimes, the war is simply over. Or is it? Aftermath. A war won without orphans this time. Silence hits first. Not the stunned, shell-shocked silence Harry remembers, full of sobs and the rustle of sheets over bodies. This is thinner, fractured by laughter that sounds almost wrong in the ruined Great Hall. The war is over. Again. But this time, the floor is not a graveyard. He walks past the staff table, waiting for the blow that never lands. No Weasley twin lying still with a joke half formed on his lips. No Remus and Tonks, pale and parallel, hands almost touching. No Colin Creevey, too small beneath a sheet. The absence of the dead he knew before cuts through the grief like a knife. Harry's eyes keep snagging on places where bodies should be. A stretch of flagstone where Fred once fell. An empty space near the doors where Snape should be bleeding out alone. Abandoned to a boathouse and a snake. His mind supplies ghosts his second chance has erased. His stomach braces for each impact, each name, each scream. None of them come. Instead, chaos of a different kind. Sirius's bark of disbelieving laughter as Remus, very much alive, a little singed and swearing in 3 languages, stumbles into his arms. Remus wheezes. "You're crushing me, Padfoot." But he's smiling in a way Harry has not seen since the night everything changed in the shrieking shack of his first life. Near the doors, Hermione is already moving, fast and purposeful, then breaking, utterly, as her parents rush in under hastily relaxed wards. This time their eyes are not blank. They know her. They remember Australia as an odd holiday, not a vanished daughter. She folds into them, sobbing, and Harry feels the echo of another hall, another Hermione whose parents' memories were never restored. Neville is lifted off his feet between Augusta Longbottom's iron grip and McGonagall's surprisingly fierce hug, both of them alive, both of them steady. McGonagall's hat is gone, her hair down, her voice rough as she tells him, "Well done, Mr. Longbottom." In the other timeline, Harry remembers, she lay unmoving for hours, and Neville's smile never reached his eyes. What if this is the real miracle, he thinks? Not defeating Voldemort, but walking a battlefield and finding it missing half its corpses. He laughs once, then chokes on it. The sound breaks. He's on his knees before he realizes, fingers digging into stone that isn't slick with blood. Tears hit clean flagstones. People stare. To them, he is the boy who lived, and then won, finally, decisively. A child general who never quite got to be a child. Of course he's crying. Of course, the war has been long. Of course the killing curse he cast at the end would cost him something. But they don't see the second layer, the invisible weight. 2 wars, 2 endings, 2 great halls, one piled with bodies, one mercifully sparse. They don't see the cupboard under the stairs he woke up in after dying once, the months of playing 11 while planning murder, and mercy with the same cold precision. "Harry, it's over," Sirius whispers, dropping to the floor beside him, arm firm around his shoulders. "You did it. It's done." Harry clings back, shaking, and cannot explain that in his head it is not done at all. That he still hears Fred's last joke, Remus's last lesson, Snape's last memory. That only he remembers the version of this night where hope came with a body count the Ministry could barely catalogue. Later, when the hall fills with healers and questions and the first hints of politics, Harry slips away. He pushes open the great oak doors and steps into the bruised purple of pre-dawn. The grounds are quiet, too quiet for a place that once held rows of dead laid out beneath the sky. The grass where he remembers bodies is untouched, only trampled by feet that survived. No Tonks with her hair finally still. No Remus with his face smoothed of worry. No Fred, no Snape, no small sheet-covered shapes. The absence hums. Harry stands on the dew-wet grass and breathes in air that doesn't taste of smoke. For a long moment he simply listens, to the distant crackle of wardstones settling, to the rustle of the forbidden forest, to the quiet inside his own skull where, for once, no new scream is trying to claw its way out. "What if this is enough?" he whispers to the empty field. "What if this is the ending we keep?" He doesn't know who he's talking to. His parents. Fate. Whatever twisted mechanism hurled him back into his 11-year-old body with every memory of the future and every choice still ahead. "Thank you," Harry says finally, to the universe or to no one at all, for bending this once. Behind him, Hogwarts stirs toward the future. In front of him, dawn breaks over a war won without orphans this time. This is that story. Rebuilding a life he never got to live, peace, when it finally arrives, is not quiet. It is loud with questions. What if the boy who lived actually has to decide what to do with a life that isn't pointed like an arrow at Voldemort's heart? In the months after the war, that never quite happens. Sirius and Remus watch Harry flinch at ordinary choices. Career forms from the Ministry sit untouched on the kitchen table at Grimmauld. A glossy brochure for Auror training. A pamphlet on curse breaking. A letter from McGonagall suggesting he consider teaching someday. He stares at them as if they're cursed objects, as if one wrong signature might resurrect the dead. Where is he supposed to live? In the black townhouse with its layered wards and haunted corridors, or in some sunlit cottage far from the echoes of the night? Everything changed. Does he share a flat with friends? Or is that a risk, a vulnerability, a tactical error? The war in his head has not received the memo that it's over. Sirius feels it first. The way Harry's shoulders never quite relax, the way his hand strays to his wand every time the flu flares. Sirius's answer is instinctive. More training, more drills, more escape routes mapped in red ink over parchment. If they stay sharp, if they stay ready, nothing can blindside them again. Isn't that the lesson of Peter, of Azkaban, of every betrayal that cut through the grief like a knife? Remus, quieter but no less haunted, reinforces it. He insists Harry keep dueling 3 nights a week, keeps layering defensive theory over breakfast, keeps testing contingency plans. What if the Death Eaters regroup? What if the Ministry backslides? What if Voldemort, or something worse, finds another way back? The pattern interrupt comes from Harry himself. One morning, he sets his wand down on the table, deliberately. "I'm not going to another drill tonight," he says. His voice doesn't rise, but it doesn't bend either. I'm going to Diagon Alley. I'm buying a ridiculous Muggle guidebook, and then I'm going to spend a week in Rome pretending I've never heard the word Horcrux. Sirius chokes on his tea. Remus stares. Travel for no reason except wanting to see something beautiful. That was never part of the story. They argue, of course. Sirius calls it reckless. Remus calls it premature. Harry calls it necessary. If I only ever live in defensive positions, he says, then Voldemort still wins, even dead. Hermione is the one who makes it real. She appears with color-coded folders, ministry travel forms already half completed, and an itinerary that includes both museums and emergency portkeys. She navigates the bureaucracy for him, slices through public expectations with the same precision she once used on exam schedules. When the prophet demands interviews, when the Aurora Office hints that a hero's place is on the front lines, she is the one who says, no, he'll help on his terms. She also catches him, gently, when habit makes him volunteer for every dangerous mission, every risky negotiation, every cursed artifact retrieval. You don't have to be the shield every time, she tells him in a quiet corridor. You're allowed to be a person. Does their bond shift under all that shared history? There are nights on the grim old rooftop when their shoulders touch, when the city glows below and the war feels very far away, when the air between them is thick with everything they've survived twice. Maybe it could become romance. Maybe it doesn't need to. Whether they ever kiss matters less than the fact that Harry can finally imagine a future where either choice is possible, not stolen. In the end, his decision is both familiar and utterly changed. He joins the Auras, but not as their poster boy. He walks into that scarred office with a quiet mandate: reform or lose him. No more child informants. No more ignored werewolf reports. No more training that prepares for duels but not for trauma. He stands in front of a classroom full of terrified 16-year-olds during a joint Aurora outreach and says, "My job is to make sure none of you ever has to do what I did. Ever." On the wall behind him, a new charter hangs, co-written by Harry, Hermione, Sirius, and Remus. A promise that the next generation will fight fewer wars and make more choices that begin with living. This time, that is the story. What changes when Dumbledore lives to see peace? Peace arrives quietly, not with trumpets, not with a phoenix's cry over a ruined castle, but with paperwork, reform bills, and a generation of children who sleep through the night. And Dumbledore lives long enough to see it. He watches from the back of that Aurora outreach classroom as Harry finishes speaking. The boy who lived turned into a man who refused to let anyone else die for his mistakes. The new charter hangs behind him, ink still fresh, signatures of Sirius and Remus pressed in beside Harry's careful script. It is a promise, and it is an indictment. What if the great chess master suddenly realizes the board has moved without him? For years, this Harry has quietly outmaneuvered him, destroying Horcruxes before Dumbledore ever named them, neutralizing Quirrell without nearly dying, turning the tournament into a trap for Voldemort. Instead of a slaughterhouse, each time Dumbledore reached for the strings he once pulled so easily and found them already cut. That knowledge ages him more than the war. The conversation, when it finally comes, is not in an office lined with whirring instruments and lemon drops. It is in the old classroom where Harry first learned the Patronus, the night everything changed for a frightened 13-year-old and a weary headmaster. The desks are pushed aside. Moonlight pools on the stone. "Professor," Harry says, and the title is a choice, not a habit. Dumbledore folds his hands. "You wish to speak with me, Harry? Truly, this time." So Harry tells him. Not every detail. The exact moment Fred died, the way Tonks's body lay twisted in the rubble. Those are wounds he will not reopen, but enough. The cupboard under the stairs, and the cupboard in his chest. The prophecy he heard too young. The walk into the forest with the resurrection stone heavy in his hand. The way Dumbledore's plan required a boy to be ready to be dead by 17. Each word seems to cut through the grief like a knife, carving away Dumbledore's defenses. He had suspected. Of course he had. Time is a strange thing in a world with time-turners and unspeakables, and Harry's impossible precision was never truly explainable. But hearing it laid out as story, as testimony, is different. "I am sorry," Dumbledore says at last, voice raw. "Not merely for sending you to your death, for leaving you with the Dursleys, for letting a prophecy dictate your childhood, for allowing the Ministry, and myself, to turn you into a symbol when you should have been a student." He looks old. Not wise, not twinkling, simply old. Harry does not rush to fill the silence. When he finally speaks, it is steady. "Without you, we would have lost. Twice. You taught me what Voldemort could never understand. But that doesn't make everything you did right. The next generation deserves better than to be weapons we sharpen in secret." A beat, that includes me. Dumbledore nods. The judgment accepted, the absolution withheld. Then it is time I stop standing in their way. He steps down from the headmaster's office within the week. No scandal, no duel, just a quiet announcement. A gentle insistence that those who actually fought this second war should lead the world they bled to build. McGonagall takes Hogwarts. Kingsley reshapes the auras. Hermione walks into the Ministry with a stack of drafts and a fire that reminds Dumbledore painfully of Lily. Sirius and Remus watch all of this from Grimmauld Place, feeling the axis of power tilt away from the old guard. But when Dumbledore asks Harry for one last favor, one last secret task before he disappears from public life entirely, that is where the story twists again. From bitter spy to reluctant mentor. Snape survives the war by inches. The boathouse still smells of blood and lake water. But this time, Nagini never makes it to his throat. Harry is not the panicked teenager of the first timeline. He is the man who has already watched Snape die once, the boy who lived carrying the memory of a second death he refuses to repeat. His stunner drops Voldemort's snake handler a heartbeat early. His shield snaps up before fangs can descend. It is a tiny deviation. It changes everything. Afterward, St. Mungo's records an unnamed war casualty with shredded neck tissue and venom burns, stabilized by improvised battlefield potions. Dumbledore is dead, Voldemort is dead, the Ministry is in shambles, and Severus Snape wakes in a white bed with his mark fading to an ugly scar. For the first time in decades, there is no master to report to, no role to play, no lie to maintain. He hates it. Peace is loud. Children laugh in the corridors of the temporary Hogwarts infirmary. Auras joke in the halls. Sirius and Remus argue over some new regulation Hermione is ramming through the Wisengamot. Snape lies still and feels everything he has been built on. Hatred, guilt, purpose through suffering tilt. Lily's son chose to save him. On purpose. What if that choice is the one he cannot repay? Harry comes alone the first time. No audience, no witnesses, just the rustle of curtains and the flat, assessing gaze of a man who has seen too much war in too small a body. "You're not here to gloat," Snape says. His voice is roughened but still cutting. "No," Harry answers. "I'm here because I need a teacher. Not forgiveness, not friendship. A job." Harry lays it out with the same ruthless clarity he once used planning raids. Hogwarts will reopen. The world has changed, but the curriculum hasn't. Children died because they learned theory instead of survival. What if potions and defense were rebuilt from the ground up? Battlefield stabilizers, anti-curse reagents, counter-hex chains that actually reflect what Voldemort's followers used. "You have experience no one else has," Harry says quietly. "On both sides. It is an insult and a compliment. In one, it lands." Snape returns to the classroom under protest. Officially, he is co-designing the new syllabi. Unofficially, he is learning how to exist without the Dark Lord or Dumbledore defining him. He still snaps. He still sneers, but there are fractures in the mask. Hermione corners him over a stack of parchment, hands ink-stained, eyes blazing. Her proposed wolfsbane adjunct is elegant, dangerous, brilliant. He reads it twice. "Acceptable," he says at last. Hermione blinks. "Is that praise?" "It is an acknowledgement that you have not wasted my time," he replies. For him, it might as well be a standing ovation. Sirius baits him at staff meetings. The barbs are sharp, the history between them sharper. Once it would have ended in hexes. Now Snape's eyes flick to Harry's tense shoulders, and he lets the insult hang in the air, unanswered. A truce made not for Black's sake, but for the boy who lived and chose him. Neville approaches after class, hands stained green, asking about integrating rare herbs into stabilizing drafts. Snape remembers a trembling first year, remembers a prophecy that could have named another child. He shows Longbottom the correct chopping pattern in silence, then adds, very softly, "You have a talent, do not waste it on mediocrity." Years later, or months, depending on whose timeline you count, Snape stands before two graves in Godric's Hollow, Lily and James Potter. The night everything changed is carved into stone by dates alone. He thinks of the boy he tormented, the man who came back in a child's skin and dragged him, furious and unready, into a future where he is not dead. "This is that story," he murmurs, almost mocking himself. A story in which Severus Snape is out of excuses. The wind cuts through the grief like a knife. He has years now. Years to decide what to do with a life that is no longer penance, but possibility. And somewhere behind him, Harry waits, patient, watchful, already planning the next impossible choice. Hermione Granger, architect of a better world. What if the legacy of the war wasn't the boy who lived, but the witch who refused to let it all happen again? Years after the night, everything changed for a second time. Hermione Granger stands in a different kind of battlefield. The atrium of a reformed ministry, its gilded statues replaced by something quieter. A circle of figures, witch, wizard, centaur, goblin, house elf, hands linked, wands down. Not a monument to victory, a promise of responsibility. She made them argue over every inch of that statue. She made them read casualty lists before they voted. Half the wizened gamut had gone visibly pale. One elderly pureblood witch had walked out in tears. Hermione did not. Remus watches from the visitors' gallery, tired and proud. Sirius leans on the rail beside him, muttering that it could use a dragon. She files that away for the next public art commission. The only question was where. Hogwarts, where she could standardize defense so that no child ever again faced a troll or a basilisk with nothing but luck. Or the Ministry, where laws had once been twisted into weapons sharper than any curse. In this story, she chooses both. By day, she is deputy head of a new department for magical equity, a portfolio she forced into existence through sheer persistence and a terrifying grasp of procedure. By night, and 2 weeks of every term, she is a guest lecturer at Hogwarts, rewriting Defense Against the Dark Arts from the ground up. No more rotating curse breakers and frauds. No more house-based favoritism. Every first year learns a shield charm. Every second year learns a Patronus framework, even if they cannot cast it yet. Every house, every blood status. The same standards, the same drills. House Elf emancipation is her first real war in peacetime. Not a slogan, a plan. She drafts transitional contracts that guarantee pay, housing, and the right to refuse unsafe orders. But she also listens when Remus quietly points out what happens to families who genuinely don't know how to cook or ward their homes. Sirius wants to burn the whole thing down in one decree. Remus wants pilot programs and enforcement schedules. Hermione threads the needle. She creates bonded apprenticeship schemes so elves who want out can train as wardcrafters and curse healers, while those who stay keep legal protections and cultural autonomy. She insists that Hogwarts become the test case. When some parents protest, she hands them a parchment detailing exactly how many meals, beds, and bleeding students their children have relied on without consent. The silence in that board meeting could have cut through the grief like a knife. Muggle-born integration is not an afterthought. It is a campaign. Orientation programs that start before Hogwarts letters arrive. Liaison offices in major Muggle cities. Workshops for magical parents on electricity, consent, and the word internet spoken without flinching. Sirius helps her design the outreach, gleefully scandalizing old families by appearing in a tailored Muggle suit at joint press conferences. Remus edits every policy draft, underlining phrases that will survive judicial review instead of just sounding righteous. And Harry stands at the edge of the crowd more often than not, hands in his pockets, scar a fading echo rather than a title. He gives speeches when she asks, lends his name to bills that would otherwise die in committee, but he knows the truth that keeps him up at night. In the long run, Hermione's paperwork may save more lives than any duel he ever fought. He is the warning. She is the blueprint. From his vantage in the gallery, he watches her face down an obstructionist pure-blood block without raising her voice. He remembers bodies in rubble, names on tombstones, futures dead before they began. This time, the war is being strangled decades before anyone can name it. One evening, long after the last vote of a brutal session, Hermione stands at her office window, looking out over a London threaded with wards she helped standardize, emergency portkeys she demanded in every Muggle-born home, and a Hogwarts that now teaches every child how to survive. The world below is still flawed. There are still bigots, still black markets, still whispers of Voldemort's ideology in back rooms. But the corridors are brighter than the ones she first walked at 11. The children are better armed, with knowledge, with rights, with choices. And somewhere behind her, in the reflection on the glass, Sirius and Remus and Harry move through this quieter future, guardians of a story that has, at last, changed. The cost of remembering Harry's quiet battles. Years pass, and the castle settles. The war is history, not prophecy. But history still crawls into Harry's bed at 3 a.m. He wakes hard, breath ragged, wand already in his hand before he remembers that this Gryffindor dormitory is quiet, that the boy in the next bed is Neville Longbottom, alive, snoring, and not the broken body from the shattered courtyard. The faces come in waves. Fred, Tonks, Remus, Snape, Colin Creevey. Dead in one life arguing about Quidditch scores in this one. That dissonance can cut through the grief like a knife. What if you saved someone and your brain refused to file them under safe? What if every laugh they gave you carried an echo of a scream only you remembered hearing? Harry rolls onto his back, stares at the canopy, and waits for his heart to slow. He knows this pattern. He's lived it twice. On paper, he has everything. Years later, he stands at weddings that were funerals the first time around. Fred Weasley's reception is loud enough to shake the rafters of the borough extension Sirius paid for after a particularly successful lawsuit against the ministry. George cries during the vows. Harry does too, but for a different reason. In the back of his mind, there's still a smoking corridor, a body under rubble, a mother's wail. At a christening for Tonks and Remus's second child, he holds the baby and feels a ghost hand close over his. In the other timeline, there was a grave on a windswept hill, and Teddy with hair that wouldn't settle. Here, Remus is arguing with Sirius about who gets godfather rights to whom, and Harry smiles, genuinely. Yet some part of him stands in the ruined Great Hall, counting the dead. Eventually he breaks. Not loudly, not dramatically, just honestly. One evening in Grimmaild's kitchen, after the guests are gone, he tells Hermione, "I survived the war, then I survived undoing it. Everyone gets to forget except me." The words hang there, heavy, survivor's guilt squared. Who prepares you for that? Hermione doesn't. She refuses to. "You're not a penance machine, Harry," she says, eyes sharp. "You're a witness. There's a difference." Remus takes a different tack. "You changed the story once," he murmurs, on a long walk across the Hogwarts grounds, frost crunching under their boots. "So change what you do with the memories." Pattern interrupt. He does something deeply un-Gryffindor. He asks for professional help. The mind healer in St. Mungo's is calm, precise, and absolutely unimpressed by the boy who lived. She talks about integration, about how 2 lifetimes of war will not be untangled by willpower and tea. She gives him exercises, breathing rituals, occlumency reframed not as walls, but as shelves where memories can rest without ruling him. It feels clinical, almost mundane. It is also the bravest thing he's ever done that no one will write songs about. There are other coping mechanisms. Long walks with Sirius, where the older man complains about ministry paperwork until Harry laughs in spite of himself. Flying until his muscles burn and the wind steals the names of the dead from his throat. And, eventually, teaching. Not defense against the dark arts as a cursed post, but as a promise. He stands in front of third years and says, "This spell is not about glory. It's about getting home." He turns trauma into lesson plans. war into case studies, the night everything changed into a cautionary tale about choice and preparation. What if this is how he pays his debt to both timelines, not by dying, but by teaching others how not to? The nightmares never vanish, some scars never do, but they stop dictating the terms of his days. In the quiet of his quarters, with letters from former students on his desk, and the sound of Hermione's children racing down the corridor, Harry allows himself a dangerous thing. He has a life he never thought he'd get to live once, let alone twice. The ghosts walk beside him, but they no longer drag him backward. This is that story, not of a boy frozen on a battlefield, but of a man who learns that remembering and living are not mutually exclusive. Canon versus AU. What this second chance really changed. But to understand what this second life means, you have to hold it up against the first. Against canon. Against the path where the boy who lived walks into Hogwarts alone and walks out with most of his childhood dead around him. In the original timeline, Sirius falls through the veil, Remus dies on a blood-slick floor, and Snape bleeds out in a boathouse that smells of river rot and regret. Hogwarts becomes a fortress, then a battlefield, then a graveyard. The Ministry falls, rises, falls again. Children die in corridors that were supposed to echo with homework complaints, not killing curses. Here, the night everything changed is not a fall through the veil, but a man in a child's body deciding he will not watch that veil claim his family twice. Sirius and Remus live. Not just live, but live free, never again reduced to prisoner and weapon. Snape survives Nagini, survives his own terrible choices, and has to live long enough to face the students he once terrorized and the colleagues who now watch him with wary, complicated respect. Voldemort is exposed earlier, dragged into the light before he can turn the Ministry into a puppet theater of fear. The war still comes, but not as a slow suffocation. It breaks fast, underprepared in some ways, shockingly contained in others. There are still dead. There are always dead. But the list of student names is shorter. The castle never becomes a slaughterhouse. What changed that trajectory? Not just knowledge. Family, chosen, stubborn, infuriating family. Sirius and Remus's guardianship wraps Harry in wards that are emotional as much as magical. Hermione's partnership means he is never the only strategist in the room, never the sole brain behind the plan, never allowed to vanish into martyrdom without a blistering argument first. In canon, Harry reacts. A troll appears, he runs. A basilisk stalks the pipes, he descends. A graveyard ritual erupts, he survives by instinct, not design. Here, he anticipates. He walks into first year already knowing about the stone, the diary, the ring on Dumbledore's hand, the diadem hidden in a room that remembers everything. He shapes crises, steers them, sometimes manufactures smaller dangers to avoid larger catastrophes. And every time a plan works, the temptation grows. Why not control more? Why not move people like chess pieces if it means fewer names on the memorial wall? That is the edge he walks. The line between becoming another Dumbledore, pulling strings from a tower, or something closer to Voldemort, for whom people are only means. The moral here is not that trust and preparation make the war clean. They don't. Pain still comes. Sacrifice still cuts through the grief like a knife. But shared burden changes the ledger. It changes who pays and how much. It means Neville doesn't have to stand alone with a broken wand. It means Colin Creevey grows up to complain about ministry paperwork instead of becoming a photograph on McGonagall's desk. So the question stopped being only, what if Harry went back? It becomes harsher and kinder. What if, when given a second chance, he chose not just to survive better, but to make sure no one had to survive the way he did? And if that is the choice, how far is he willing to go to keep it? Closing the loop from cupboard to chosen future. So what does he actually build with that choice? What does the boy who lived, died, and lived again do when the war is over twice, and the cupboard under the stairs is only a memory? Morning light spills across a different kitchen. Not number 4 with its plastic fruit and Petunia's sharp eyes, but a narrow sunlit room in a cottage on the edge of Devon. The table is scarred wood, not polished veneer. A chipped mug steams beside a folded prophet, and next to it, spread open like a relic from another war, lies the marauder's map edges, worn, ink faded in places where fingers have traced the same paths for years. Children's laughter echoes down the hall. Feet thunder. A small voice yells something about a Quidditch foul that would make McGonagall raise an eyebrow. Another giggles. High and bright, the sound cutting through the old grief like a knife. Harry doesn't flinch at the noise. He doesn't brace for Dudley's fists or Vernon's shout. He just smiles, slow and almost disbelieving, and sets his hand flat over the map. What if this is the real victory? Not the duel in the Great Hall, not the second quieter war he fought in the body of an 11-year-old, but this, a morning where nobody needs him to be a symbol. He thinks of both timelines the way others think of old photographs. In the first, the cupboard is dark and airless, the war is long, and the dead are too many to name in one breath. In the second, the cupboard is still there on the night everything changed, but an adult mind inside a child's frame refuses to stay. He remembers walking out, remembers forcing the ministry to look at the Dursleys, remembers steering Dumbledore without becoming Dumbledore, remembers hunting Horcruxes early, so Colin Creevey grew up to complain about forms instead of falling in a corridor. He could drown in what-ifs. What if he'd moved faster? What if one more person could have been saved? But he doesn't live there anymore. Regret is acknowledged, catalogued, and put away the way he once filed reports as an Auror dismantling what remained of Voldemort's rot. He stands, crosses to a small door in the corner. The handle is the same cheap metal he remembers from Privet Drive. The angle of the frame is the same. For a heartbeat, the past presses close. He opens the cupboard. No bed. No spiders clinging to cold concrete. Shelves bow under the weight of board games with missing pieces, half-boxed Weasley's Wizard Wheezes prototypes, a crate of chocolate frogs raided by small guilty hands. 3 toy brooms lean against the wall, bristles frayed from enthusiastic, low-flying collisions. No child sleeps here, not in this house, not in this world he bled twice to change. Behind him, a girl's voice, his daughter, calls, "Dad, you promised you'd fly with us before you go to the ministry." Another, a boy with Lily's eyes and Sirius's reckless grin, adds, "And you can't back out, you made it a magically binding oath." He didn't, of course, but the fact that his children think he might have says everything about the life they expect. A father who keeps his word, not a jailer who locks doors. He closes the cupboard gently, palm resting for a moment on the wood, as if sealing a contract with his younger self. Not a prison, a promise. This is that story. Not a tale of a weapon forged in a dark cupboard, but of a man who used 2 lifetimes of war and choice to make sure no one else had to be. The boy who lived, died, and lived again finally gets to just live. But if peace is his choice, and the world still remembers its savior, how long before someone, somewhere, tries to drag Harry Potter back into the shadows he thought he'd left behind? If you want more timelines like this, peace is his choice. But the world and the boy who lived are never that simple. We've walked with Harry from the night everything changed twice. First, the ruined courtyard at Hogwarts, war dead at his feet, Voldemort finally gone. Then the suffocating dark of a cupboard, dust in his throat, every scar and scream still burning behind 11-year-old eyes. One life ending with a killing curse in a forest, the next beginning beneath the stairs, with a second chance that cut through the grief like a knife. From there, every year was re-engineered, not a replay, but a controlled detonation. Quirrell and the stone neutralized with cold preparation instead of blind luck. The chamber opened and closed on Harry's terms. Basilisk turned from nightmare into weaponized asset. Sirius freed without a Dementor's kiss. Peter dragged into the light before he could vanish into the cracks of the Ministry again. Horcruxes hunted years ahead of schedule. Each diary, ring, locket, cup, and diadem dismantled by a child who wasn't a child at all. We watched him edge closer to Dumbledore's methods, without falling into Dumbledore's sins. We saw him stare at Snape and remember a man who died for him, then choose to build that loyalty early instead of waiting for a memory in a pensieve. We saw Ron and Hermione pulled into the truth slowly, not as pawns on a chessboard, but as the family he refused to lose a second time. And when the war finally came, it was shorter, sharper, and far less bloody, because one stubborn, exhausted boy refused to accept that prophecy meant inevitability. That's the heart of this story. Not just time travel, but the power of a second chance wielded by someone who knows exactly what war costs. The Way-found family, Weasleys, Order members, even a re-earned trust with the Ministry, can turn a weapon into a network. The way preparation, honest warnings, and shared plans can transform a destiny written in a dusty book into a choice made again and again in the quiet hours before dawn. But what if this was only one branch? What if Harry had told Sirius everything on day one and let a furious godfather and a methodical Remus re-architect the entire fight? What if, in that sorting ceremony, he'd leaned into the whisper and chosen Slytherin, turning ambition and cunning against Voldemort from inside his own house? What if someone else had gone back instead? Hermione with her ruthless logic, Snape with his guilt, or even Peter trying to outrun the man he became. So now it's your turn. In the comments, tell me, which divergence in this timeline hit you hardest? Was it the Cupboard Awakening, the first Horcrux destroyed years early, the moment Sirius walks free, or the quieter, almost awkward peace after the war that never quite explodes? Which character did you most want to see dragged back from the edge of being dead and gone for good? If you want more timelines like this, more long-form what-if explorations that follow every choice until the world is unrecognizable, make sure you're subscribed. Tell me which AU you want fully mapped out next. A different survivor, a different traitor, a different night everything changed. And if you know someone who lives for deep, character-driven rewrites of familiar worlds, share this video with them so they can fall into this story too.